Board members joining us via Zoom, we're going to give this about 2 more minutes. We're just giving everyone the opportunity to find us today because of the room change. A couple more minutes. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors. Today is Friday, January 31st, 2025 at 9:05 a.m. We're meeting in person today at the George H.W. Bush Building in Austin. My name is Stephen Hallbauer. I'm a public member. I'm the board chair. I'm going to hand it down to my left to Ms. Campanone on the end for introductions.
Good morning. I am a professional member. I am Brenda Compagnone. Welcome.
I'm Jen Winston. I am public member.
I'm Dr. Loretta Bradley. I'm a professional member. And in my other life, I'm a counselor educator at Texas Tech in Lubbock.
Good morning, Dr. Janie Stubblefield, and I'm a professional member.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Amuna, and I'm a professional member.
And we have 3 of our board members joining us over Zoom today. I'll start with Vice Chair Taylor.
My name is Dr. Christopher Taylor. I am a professional member and the vice chair. Thanks, Steve.
And Mr. Shakarami.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sean Shakarami, and I'm a public member.
Thank you. And Ms. Hall.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Hall, and I am a public member.
Thank you. That is our full board. I'll hand it over to Christina for staff introductions.
Good morning. My name is Christina DeLuna. I'm the board administrator for the LPC board. We also have Brenda Skiff, who is the executive assistant. We have online John Bridges, who is the LPC board attorney. We have Patrick Hyde, general counsel, Robert Romig, deputy executive director, and in a little while, you'll probably see Daryl Spinks, the executive director of the agency.
Thank you, Christina. I apologize and neglected to verify for the minutes that we have a full board today that is satisfaction of the quorum requirements. Move on to our stakeholder introductions. Anyone out in the audience that would like to introduce themselves? Thank you, Dr. Hollingsworth. And Noah, thanks for joining us. Any other stakeholder representatives?
No, I'm just an individual. I'm Catherine Ellers.
Okay. Thank you for being here. That concludes our introductions. We're going to move forward with any announcements. This kind of segues into item number 3, but I'm making a note on an agenda edit. On item number 3, public comment. For number 3, we are going to take general public comment first. Any comment that is specific towards item 10B rulemaking, we are going to take that at the time that we actually take up that specific agenda item. So to be clear, we're going to do 2 separate public comment periods. The first one right now, immediately following, is general public comment. Anything that you would like to speak of that is not related to item number 10B rulemaking. When we get to agenda item 10B, we will have an introduction of the item, and then we will take public comment at that time prior to the board's discussion. Is there any questions on that? Okay. So at this time, we'll go ahead and move forward with item 3, general public comment. Please limit it to any other item other than rulemaking in 10B. You can come forward.
Hey, y'all changed my plan up.
Sorry about that.
I'm going to give it my best shot. All right. Good morning, Chair Haubauer and board members. I am Dr. Lori Hollingsworth. I'm a licensed professional counselor and supervisor in San Angelo, Texas. I currently serve as the president of the Texas Mental Health Counselors Association, which is TOMCA, and we are a division of the Texas Counseling Association and a state chapter of the American Mental Health Counselors Association. TOMCA appreciates the opportunity in hosting the board's panel presentation at the TCA Professional Growth Conference this past October. Looking ahead, we are excited to have Dr. Loretta J. Bradley and Dr. Janie Stubblefield and Christina DeLuna represent the board at the 2025 TOMCA Spring Conference on April the 25th in Kerrville, Texas. We appreciate the board's initiative to interact and engage with Texas counselors through panel presentations and friendly chats by taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to TOMCA conferences, but also to support other association conferences. And I will stop there and come back later.
Thank you. And next we had Noah Jones. Do you have anything, Noah? Okay. And Catherine, anything you'd like to say?
I read I was only had 3 minutes, so I want to time myself because I have a lot to say. Forgive me. My name is Catherine Ellert. I graduated from University of Texas in psychology in 1968. I went to Indiana University and got my doctorate. Finishing that in 1972, I worked in Indiana many decades. Part of that career in private practice agencies, many years worked in prisons. So I had an opportunity to work very intimately with people who were changing their lives. While I worked with prisoners and prisons, I also had occasion to interact with parole boards, which, much like you, have a great responsibility in protecting the public. By the way, I thank you and respect you and honor you for your work. And I do realize that that's a very serious job and a very great responsibility. Very few parole boards gave people a second chance. When they had to let people out, they did. But it was very rare to see a person, even among offenders who had made great changes, advanced their education, done work, were outstanding people. Even it was hard. It was very hard to get parole ahead of your time. And much like Shannon now, I'm sure her chances, because of the egregious offense she committed, which is obviously wrong, and you were, as I said in my letter of reference, completely correct in revoking her license, now have the opportunity to reinstate that license. And I'm here to ask you to please consider that. I mentioned I've been working in the field decades, and I have seen all kinds of therapists. I've seen really good ones, exceptional ones, and sadly, I've seen some really bad ones too. Not any that made egregious errors, as Shannon did, and had their licenses revoked, but just, what can I say kindly, unhelpful therapists. I've had the chance to work with Shannon. I've been her therapist for 2 years. I've seen the work that she has done, and I am very impressed. It's really awesome what she's done with her life, and the work, just the work she's done. I'm very moved, obviously, by the enormity of her work. I think the CEUs that I mentioned in her letter are only at the tip of the iceberg in terms of her deep work. Also mentioned in the letter is her work with AA and sexual addiction, and she has thrown herself into remaking her life. I support her completely. I think she would be a great benefit to the field of counseling, and I will certainly refer people to her. In the last 30 seconds, I was thinking of a silly thing, probably maybe not even appropriate, but I co-signed a lease so a friend of mine could get a loan. And I thought, if I could put my license on Shannon's as a contingency, it's a kind of co-sign for her, I would happily do that. That is how much I believe in this young woman. She will be a great contribution to the field. And I ask you to please reconsider this very important decision. And I've got to stop. Thank you for your consideration and your work.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next person we have in the building is Rachel Longoria. Would you like to provide any comment? Okay, perfect. And I believe we have a couple online, so let me pull those up. Okay, first one we have is Dr. Kate Walker.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kate Walker. Thank you all for the hard work you do. I want to echo Dr. Hollingsworth. At Kate Walker Training, we try to get out information. I do this through Facebook groups. We do this through free webinars. And Ms. Christina DeLuna and Mr. Robert Romig presented to our groups January 29th. We had over 100 people registered, and I just want to thank them so much for the great information, the great explanations, and patiently answering our questions. So again, I just appreciate all you do, and we will continue to do our best to keep putting out y'all's information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
The next person, Michael Leisure. I apologize if I said that incorrectly.
Good morning. My name is Michael Lesher. I am an LPC supervisor in private practice in Houston, and I serve as the director of the Texas Society of Sexual, Affectional, Intersex, and Gender Expansive Identities, Texas SAGE, which is a division of the Texas Counseling Association. We believe that all individuals should be free to develop their full potential regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity, and that professional counselors must understand the unique ways LGBTQ+ individuals experience inequity and injustice resulting from discrimination and prejudice. Texas SAGE strongly supports the board's commitments to equity and inclusion initiatives, which are not only ethical imperatives, but essential to the well-being of all Texans. As mental health professionals, we have a duty to provide care that affirms the dignity and humanity of every individual. Research and lived experience confirm that LGBTQ+ and other marginalized communities continue to face significant disparities in mental health access and outcomes. Many of these individuals encounter discrimination, trauma, and systemic barriers that may make competent, culturally responsive counseling services a necessity, not a luxury. We urge the board to uphold and expand policies that, one, ensure culturally competent and affirming care. LPCs must be trained to understand the diverse identities and experiences of their clients. Competencies in gender and sexual diversity is fundamental to ethical practice. Two, mandate continuing education in E&I topics. Mental health care is an evolving field, and continued education in areas such as gender diversity, racial equity, and trauma-informed care is vital to ensuring LPCs provide the highest standard of care. Three, protect counselors' ability to provide ethical, evidence-based care. No counselor should be restricted from providing affirming, research-supported mental health services due to political or ideological pressures. Professional ethics must guide our practice, not misinformation or discrimination. Equity and inclusion are not partisan issues. They are professional standards rooted in our ethical obligation as counselors. Upholding these principles ensures that every Texan, regardless of identity, can access the affirming, competent care they deserve. Texas SAGE is eager to continue our work educating and advocating for these critical initiatives. In fact, we would like to encourage members of this board and the public to attend our Texas SAGE Mental Health Symposium 2025 on May 24th in Houston, Texas at the Montrose Center. Thank you for your time and your dedication to protecting the integrity of the counseling profession in Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. I would reiterate that any comments specifically related to proposed rulemaking and agenda item 10B remain until we take public comment for the second time prior to the board's rulemaking discussion. Thank you.
Next person we have is Diane Smedley.
Good morning, board. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Oh, just very barely.
Oh, let me try again.
There you
There you
are.
go.
That's better.
There you go. Okay, perfect. Please excuse me, I'm sick. That's why I'm not with you all there today. But good morning, Chair Hallbauer, fellow board members and staff. My name is Dr. Diane Smedley. I am a licensed professional counselor supervisor, a licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor, and I'm also a counselor educator. Additionally, I serve as the liaison to the Texas LPC Board for the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision. And TASIS is the division of TCA that's dedicated to strengthening counselor education and supervision. And as always, I'm grateful for the opportunity to make public comment today and for all of y'all's continuous hard work. On behalf of President-elect Dr. Melissa Alvarado, TASIS greatly appreciates LPC board members' willingness to present and provide our membership with a regulatory board update at our upcoming midwinter conference at the end of February there in Austin, Texas. TASIS is again looking forward to another exceptional conference. I also wanted to take a moment, and just acknowledge and appreciate Dr. Stubblefield's work with the Children's Mental Health Strategic Plan. I'm a counselor educator out here in rural East Texas, and I have already over the winter break have seen the fruits of that work, educating decision makers in my area, therefore impacting how they make decisions now and for future planning, and specifically helping families, which is a core area of my personal work. And so as a counselor educator and supervisor, it's just really exciting to see how and be able to teach my students and the supervisees how the LPC board has such deep roots and stakes in really educating, and really helping the treatment of Texas youth, because we know that Texas youth are severely underserved nationally when it comes to mental health. So with that said, that's all I have to say for now. In closing, just thank you again for this opportunity to make these public comments and for your continued dedication to the citizens of Texas.
Thanks, Diane. Feel better.
Okay, and the last comment we have is going to be from Kathleen Mills.
Hello, Chair Hallbauer, licensing board professionals and public members, and also the BHEC staff. Thank you so much for doing this meeting today. My comment right now is to invite all of you to our conference with Association for Mental Health Professionals in October. And the title of our conference is Hope for Our Profession and Our Clients Through Holistic Paradigms in Revitalizing America. I'm really extending, would love to have you there to see there's another side of how to treat our clients with love and respect, and also in a holistic way. So if you have any questions or concerns, please just give me an email, but we would love to have you attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for public comment at this time.
Thanks, everyone. And one final reminder, we will take public comment when we get to the discussion regarding the amendments on the agenda in item 10B. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4 is the board chair report. The written version is in the meeting materials today. I did want to point out the big item going on right now that we're paying attention to is, of course, the start of the 89th legislative session. Last report I got, staff is tracking approximately 114 bills that have a chance of impacting the profession. They are doing a great job of keeping each of the chairs apprised on where that legislation stands, getting an update about every 2 to 3 days at this point. Of particular note, I did want to mention that House Bill 1537 and Senate Bill 498 are the proposed counseling compact. And this is compared to the 88th legislative session 2 years ago. The bills are beginning the process earlier than they did last time, and that's encouraging. As you recall, the board did pass a resolution stating why we believe that the compact membership has benefits for Texans, and that is the board's position on it. We will be paying close attention to both the House and Senate versions, and if anything comes up, if we need perhaps a one of y'all to testify in front of a committee, staff will send out an alert, and we will ask a brave volunteer to go do that. And of course, I'll keep you posted on that. Robert, I know Senate Bill 51 and 716 are also of particular importance. Is there anything that you would want to add to that?
The only other thing besides bills is the budget process is also underway, and the introduced budget in both the House and the Senate carries the same base budget that we had last time, and so certainly for those who've been around long enough, you may remember times where the introduced budget had cuts. So this is great that there are no cuts. Whether we get any additional money, we'll find out later.
Okay, thank you. That's about the most. I did kind of combine the board chair report with the BHEC update. So moving on to 4B, items from BHEC, I did want to let everybody know that BHEC did review and they passed our first batch related to the quadrennial rule revisions. This was a lot of the housekeeping measures. Those were all passed at the BHEC level. And this is kind of, for those of you that aren't aware of this, BHEC about 2 weeks ago signed their contract with CE Broker for online CE compliance management. And I would say be watching for announcements and instructions within next few months, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, hopefully we'll have it up in, it will be going live sometime in the summer towards September. So there will be announcements, but you do not have to do anything until closer to summer.
All right, thank you. Dr. Taylor, did you have anything to add from the BHEC meeting that you wanted to?
Thanks, Steve. No, not particularly. I think you covered it. It was a good meeting. I think we got a lot done, and excited to see our package get passed through.
Next BHEC meeting is Tuesday, February the 18th. Okay. Board, any questions on either BHEC level matters or on the board chair report? Okay, hearing none. I will do a quick notation that our executive director, Daryl Spinks, has joined us today. Good to see you, Daryl. Just kind of breezed through items that are pending in the ledge. Anything that you wanted to add to that? Not okay. I'll let everybody know you're doing a great job of sending us those reports on where everything stands. So, it's still early, but we're just going to be monitoring it the whole time. Okay. 4C, Christina, report from our board administrator.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So just a little bit of background for licensing, application processes, and all that fun stuff. Anyone who's calling, please go ahead and leave your email when you leave a message for staff. It's a lot quicker for them to be able to respond to you, and you have a trail of something in writing from us for whatever your question is related to. We have many resources on the webpage. So please get familiar with it. Our FAQs area, we've kind of sectioned it out a little bit to make it a little easier to find things that you may be looking for questions on. Let's see. I know a big one that we still get a lot of questions on is related to when the supervised experience documentation form needs to be submitted. It's within 30 days of completing supervision with the associate. It doesn't matter if you're the first or the third supervisor, it has to be within 30 days of completing those hours with the associate. Any supervisors who are adding hours online, that's great. You can continue to do that, but we do still ask for that supervised experience form to be submitted, which can be emailed as well. So just wanted to clarify that. As I always tell, a reminder on renewals, just to remind everyone, 1 hour of human trafficking awareness is required, and the jurisprudence is also required for renewals. There have been no issues related to the 50% rule. So everything you're doing it correctly. Just keep doing what you are, and that process will continue to work. Licensing timeframes, we are working on January 16th right now. So staff are still working really hard on keeping those timeframes as close as possible to when you're applying. Just remember that when you do apply or do your upgrade or do your renewal, send in everything we need at that time. Know what documents are required, because if you have everything when the staff are working that application, it can get processed that same day. The reason that it might be delayed is because you may be missing documents. So just want to remind everyone, just go look online again on the website. If you go to applying for a license, we have when you click there, you can find all the different sections for upgrading, renewing, and what you're going to need to submit. We give you all of that breakdown. So it should be pretty easy to know what needs to be submitted. Otherwise, things are going pretty well with licensing. We are fully staffed again for the LPC program. We do have 5 staff, and things are continuing to flow. And thank you, board members, for reviewing all of the materials like you always do. And it's a high volume one this time, so I appreciate all the work that you guys do.
Thank you, Christina. We'll move on to 4D, our committee reports. Christina, you're going to have item number 1, application and supervision issues.
Correct. So the Application and Supervision Issues Committee, they met 6 times since the last board meeting. The cases there were 2 related to past criminal histories, 2 that related to academics, and then there were 2 that related to supervisor status. That's kind of just an update of what they did.
Board, any questions for Christina regarding application and supervision? Hearing none, we'll move on to Rules Committee. Dr. Stubblefield.
Chair Halbauer, the Rules Committee met 3 times since our last full board meeting. We met in October to discuss transcript reviews. We met in December to discuss rules from the quadrennial rule review that were recommended for repeal. And then in January 2025, we met to discuss the rule and language for CEU requirements and the removal of the expiration date for the LPC supervision training.
Okay.
Did you want me to?
No, we're going to get it. Board, any questions for Dr. Stubblefield at this time? We're going to discuss the proposed changes coming up, but any questions at this time? Okay, hearing none. Christina, item 5 is performance measures.
So in your board packet material, you were given all of the performance reports as you do each time. It's also in the public material if y'all had any questions on it. No questions?
Board, any questions? Okay, hearing none. Item 6 is Dr. Stubblefield's update on our Children's Mental Health Strategic Plan Subcommittee.
Quick again, sorry. The Children's Mental Health Strategic Plan Subcommittee has completed and delivered their report to the governor's office. It was completed and delivered on time, which was December 1st of 2024. A full copy of the report was sent to the Behavioral Health Executive Council and is also included in today's meeting packet. There are ongoing updates for mental health workforce that are being reported to that subcommittee.
Okay. Board, any questions regarding the report for Dr. Stubblefield? Okay. Janie, a personal note. Thank you for serving on. It was a lot of work. Dr. Stubblefield not only represented professional counselors, she represented BHEC. She represented all of our Texas mental health professionals, and she did an awesome job. That was a lot of work. Thank you.
Truly, it was my honor.
Moving on, item number 7 is licensing matters. Christina and Robert, please.
Yes, the first case we're going to hear today is going to be for Brenda Maxey. And I will look here in a sec. I believe she will be on the call. She is. Okay. So just to start out, this is in the board packet material. Ms. Maxey does have an LCDC license that is current until 2027. You will see in your documents that the board did look at this in 2016 and we told her that there should be no barrier to licensure. She did go to school, get her degree, and has now come to apply with us, and it is now being presented to the full board to review related to past criminal history. So I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that there has been a previous review as well. And let me get her here. Did you want to add anything?
Just 3 minutes.
And just to note for the board, staff is bringing this to the board not because we are recommending denial. We have no problems with the board granting license in this case. The significance of the criminal history, we felt it appropriate for the board to make the decision.
Okay. Does she have
And-
counsel?
She does not. No.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Brenda, Maxie, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. You have 3 minutes to provide any additional information you would like the board to know.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm a little nervous. I'm sorry. Dear members of the Mental Health Counseling Board, I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to meet with you today and share my journey. It is an honor to address any concerns regarding my fitness to practice as an LPCA, and I truly appreciate this chance to reflect on my experiences, the lessons I have learned, and the path that has led me to this point. In 1989, I found myself in a domestic violence relationship, which led to a decision I truly regret. This was a challenging and life-altering experience, and I take full responsibility for my actions. However, it has also been an invaluable teacher. It has heightened my awareness of the importance of emotional processing, seeking guidance from my support system, and embracing personal accountability. The reflection and healing that follow have greatly contributed to my growth as both a person and as a counselor, and I have worked faithfully to ensure that the past will never be repeated. What I have learned from this experience is the importance of ongoing self-reflection and continuous personal and professional growth. The pain I endure has inspired me to make deliberate efforts to better myself as a person and as a counselor. I have pursued therapy, self-supervision, and committed myself to expanding my understanding of the counseling theories, practice, and ethics. These efforts are not only about addressing past mistakes, but they are about becoming a counselor who can meet clients where they are, offering a safe space that is compassionate, empathetic, and grounded in the highest ethical standards. My goal in attaining the LPCA license is to serve those who have experienced trauma, creating an environment where clients can process their experiences, rebuild hope, and regain trust. My personal experience have instilled in me a deep appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit, and I am determined to carry this awareness into my practice. And I believe that counseling is not merely a profession for me, but a calling. Though I recognize that my past may raise concerns, I am confident that the growth and transformation I have experienced through these challenges make me a stronger, more compassionate counselor. I approach my work with greater empathy, humility, and understanding. The experience that have shaped me, given me unique insights into the struggles many clients face. My passion to contribute meaningful to the profession remains unwavering, and I deeply committed myself in the future in counseling and maintaining the ethical standards required of this role. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am open to any further dialogue or questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Maxey. Please stay on Zoom for any possible questions from our board members.
Thank you.
Anything that you want to add from the staff review on that?
You know, traditionally in these cases, when it's a very old conviction, we tend to feel that should not stand in the way of licensure. And this has been quite a while.
Yeah. And no further issues since then, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Board, questions for Ms. Maxey? Concerns regarding our possible options? Okay, hearing none. Our options are we can approve the past criminal history with no restrictions. We can approve past criminal history with restrictions in an eligibility order, or we can deny the application based on the past criminal history. Okay? We'll start at the top. Does anyone have an issue that we approve the past criminal history with no restrictions?
May I ask a question here? Our committee has heard this, and should we be voting again?
Yes, an applications committee, you don't have to recuse yourself. You don't need to recuse from an application.
Anything come up in the applications committee that you would want to share with the full board, Dr. Bradley?
In the mic.
Committee members that were present, I think there were some concerns expressed by the committee. But I think we were agreeable to hear what she has to say. We were seeking any additional information to help us better address concerns. I'll defer now to any other committee members for your summary.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Hello. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that I was a former director and executive director for Battered Women's Shelter. And so reading all of the information, I completely understand what happened. And, I also believe in second chances. I think from what I'm reading, she's done quite a bit for herself, wants to move forward, and just her own life experiences are definitely going to help others. And so that's the only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you, Brenda.
I'll just add, not being on the applications committee for this case, reading through the large quantity of information. So you guys did your due diligence with the information you were able to provide us. I will say that this incident happened pre-licensure, before she was here, and based off of the mitigating circumstances of what put her in that position is why I don't have any reservations right now. It's before this person was ever licensed, and there was a lot of mitigating situations related to what Brenda mentioned. So that's why I have no reservations with going forward with the vote.
Okay. Board members joining us via Zoom, any questions or comments that you would like to add? Ms. Hall, go ahead.
I just wanted to echo what the professional members are saying. As a public member, I would not feel threatened or uncomfortable if she was a therapist. I would feel very comfortable with not only what she has shared today, what the documentation shows, but just in general, that she has really learned the lessons. And I think she'll be a great asset to women who find themselves in similar predicaments.
Okay. Dr. Taylor or Mr. Shakarami, anything that you would want to add? Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
No, I think Ms. Hall said it best. I totally agree.
Okay. Mr. Shakarami, do you have anything that you would want to add?
I have nothing to add other than it's very tragic, and Miss Maxey, I'm glad that things have worked out for you post this incident. Never wish anything like that on anybody.
Thank you. Okay, board, I do need a motion if there is no further discussion at this time.
I'll move that we grant her licensure without restriction.
I'll second.
Okay. We now have a motion and seconded to approve the past criminal history and with no restrictions. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? Okay, hearing none, we will take a vote at this time. Please signify your acceptance by raising your hand, especially people online. We do need to verify y'all's votes as well. All in favor of approving the license with no restrictions for Ms. Maxey, please raise your hand and signify. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Maxey. Our board administrator will be in touch with you. Anything you want to add to her, Christina?
No, just that I'll reach out to you, Ms. Maxey, and we'll go from there. You'll hear from me next week.
And I would just note for those in attendance, love your show of support. When the chair calls for raising of hands for a vote, that's just the board members. You don't need to raise your hand, but glad to see your support.
Thank you, Ms. Maxey.
Thank you, Ms. Maxey. We will move on to our second item, Ms. O'Connor, who I believe is here. Ms. O'Connor, you have 3 minutes, and is your counsel on Zoom? Okay.
Let me find her.
Do you want to speak first, or do you want her to speak first? Okay.
Hello.
Just a second. Oh, is your attorney going to speak first, or you? Okay. Ms. Clement, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I will try to speak quickly so I give Ms. O'Connor a chance. Thank you for allowing us to speak. Including in your board packet are the following items: certificates evidencing the completion of 144 hours of CEUs completed by Ms. O'Connor, 12 character references, including the earlier speaker, 2 signed clinical supervision forms of supervised hours completed, which totaled over 3,000 hours, a copy of the Texas Administrative Code 882.22, which allows for, following the revocation of a license, the reinstatement of that license after 1 year, a copy of Ms. O'Connor's active LCDC license, just to let you know that she has not been working without a license, a copy of her psychosexual evaluation, which found her to be of low risk, and and a list of agreed orders under BHEC with similar violations that resulted in short periods of suspension and probation, or just a period of probation. And I included the entire agreed orders for your review. And I believe Ms. O'Connor may have a few words to share.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Ms. O'Connor, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Laurel. I've met many of you before a couple years ago, but just to refresh your memories, my name is Shannon O'Connor. I'm here because 4 years ago, this never gets easier. 4 years ago, I violated the Counseling Code of Ethics by engaging in a sexual romantic relationship with a former client. 2 years later, as a consequence of my own actions, my license was revoked. And today, although I know there's a really good chance that my application will be denied, I believe that I can help a lot of people and continue to help a lot of people as a counselor. And so that's why under Rule 882.22, I'm here asking to reapply for licensure, even at an associate level. And let me go to my notes. I know that it's ultimately up to the board's discretion to vote if I should or shouldn't be a licensed counselor. And if y'all feel that more rehabilitation is necessary first, I'd like to be pointed in the right direction today to do so. It's my hope, after reviewing the packet I submitted, which I know is a lot of reading, and I'm sorry, the board will agree that I've taken a number of measures to make positive changes towards growth and healing. I've endured the consequence that I deserved, and I used it as fuel to improve myself and take corrective measures. I'd like to assure the board that regardless of today's decision, I will continue to find ways to help and serve others. Thank you for reviewing my case and considering my application. And if you guys have any questions, also direction and suggestion of how I can make things right, that's what I'm here to learn today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Board, it goes without saying this, we initially took this up at our prior meeting, but we had additional information that didn't make it into the packet for that first time. And that's why we're taking a look at this again. And we also have Ms. O'Connor in person in order to ask direct questions of her, and her attorney is on the Zoom if we have questions for her counsel. Board, any specific questions? Dr. Bradley, go ahead.
I kind of remember portions of your case, and I noticed you used the term corrective measures. If I ask you to give me 3 corrective measures that you think has been most important in helping you change your path, would you elaborate on those just briefly?
My top 3. I would say engaging in therapy. I did DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and I've also been engaged in therapy with Catherine for the last 2 years. So I would say that corrective measures include extensive counseling. I would say probably the biggest change in my life is doing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I have seen such improvement through the work of the 12 steps in my life and the life of others. I would say that service is probably the biggest thing that keeps me connected to my growth and healing, you know, whether it's as a mentor, as a substance use counselor, as a sponsor for other women. What other roles do I have? As a coach, as a case manager. I think staying really close to serving others, and I don't want to bring religion to it, but serving God and helping others is really the thing that keeps me on the path to growth and improvement.
Follow-up questions?
Follow-up. If I were conducting research on your case, what percentage would you give me in terms of how likely you are to do this again?
0%.
Pardon?
I would say I'm 0% likely. I think that Dr. Jeffrey Fletcher's psychosexual evaluation that he did a couple years ago said like 3% recidivism, but I can assure you this would never happen again.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Mina.
I'll ask a question with the full understanding that you may not have an answer. Many of us up here teach. We teach in counseling psychology programs. One of the first things we teach our students in counseling psychology is to do not engage with your clients. Before we even teach anything else, for the most part, if I can speak liberally, what could your professors have said to you in your training to prevent you from being here now?
I am not sure how to answer that. But I will say, although it's extensively explored, it's a taboo for a reason. And I think I wasn't prepared for the level of intimacy that counseling provides, and it's such a unique forum. And I think that there's room for a lot of countertransference and confusion, especially for where I was at the time. It doesn't excuse it, but I was trying to get sober at that time. And it was during a pandemic. I was really isolated. I was really lonely. And I don't excuse my actions at all, but I do feel like it was the perfect recipe for a disaster. And I tumbled into love. And I don't know what else to say about it other than, you know, you hear that you're not supposed to, but then all of the neurotransmitters that happen that fire off when you fall in love just distort reality. Yeah, I don't want to ramble or put my foot in my mouth any further, but thank you for your question.
And I'll say thank you for that response. My challenge in all of this, Having been a clinician in mental health for over 20 something years, everything that you've said is correct. As far as a perfect storm happening, and my challenge, and my duty essentially to my future students and my current students is perfect storms may happen every day. So how do we as a profession be above the storm? And my concern is if another pandemic happens, if another stress happens, if, firestorms and tornadoes happen, what grounding do you have to make sure that you don't find yourself in this situation again?
Well, first of all, I would be honored to use my experience, strength, and hope to speak to your students, let them know you do not want to go down this path, and I know firsthand. I would say again, a psychic change has happened for me as a result of the 12 steps and the extensive therapies that I've done. I would run in the opposite direction if a perfect storm happened again. There's no way I would want to go through all of this again. I wouldn't want to potentially harm this profession or any of the clients that I see. I know so deeply firsthand the damage that can be done. And so I guess that's what protects me from ever being in a perfect storm again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Shakarami.
So building off the perfect storm, and thinking back to the last meeting here, I think one of the things that prevents perfect storms from happening is transparency, congruency, and integrity. And so my question is more for Ms. Clement, your legal counsel. Ms. Clement, in the September meeting, we spoke about at least being able to come to some kind of closure on this case. Do you remember that conversation?
Not exactly. I'm sorry, I don't recall that specific sentence.
Yeah, so I didn't use the term closure, but it was pretty evident that the board was not going to vote to allow Shannon to reapply. And I made the point to say that we at least have to give her some type of answer. Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it never again? And I think Shannon kind of alluded to that at the end of her address when she said, if you could at least provide me some direction on what more I need to do. The reason I bring this up is because alcohol seems to play a pretty big role, and the alcohol was a pretty big reason, at least 50% it seemed. We talked a lot about alcohol and the CEs that were missing but now provided. I guess, how would it make you feel if there's board members potentially here who are profiting off of alcohol?
Mr. Shakarami, that is out of order, sir. That's not for public discussion.
Well, I think what's most important to think about is how alcohol has affected Shannon. And there are many therapists out there who are in recovery and who have been effective counselors. And quite frankly, some of the most effective therapists working with recovering or people going to substance abuse facilities have gone through recovery themselves and have been working through the 12 steps themselves. And I think Shannon is a really good example of how, unfortunately, hitting rock bottom, which is exactly what happened to her. And it happened to her in such an unfortunate way. Some, drunks do it when they wake up on the cement outside the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning with the police nudging them. That's their rock bottom. Well, unfortunately for Shannon, it was, being uh, being investigated for sexual misconduct. And the perfect storm was the fact, yeah, I mean, alcohol was a part of it, but COVID was in there too. I mean, you have to remember this was 2020 and everybody was wearing masks. We were isolated. That was a huge factor. You have to remember how significant that time was and how isolating that time was. And so, yeah, that was part of it, but to say that was 50%, maybe that's stretching things a bit. So she was young, and that was definitely a factor. Alcohol was a factor, but there were a lot of factors that were coming into play. And I think really the fact that I think she makes a really good point that she did not realize how much of an intimate experience the counseling relationship was going to become and how that would affect her feelings toward her client. So are there any other questions?
Yes, I have some questions. And I'm so sorry, I needed to finish my thought, taking some notes. And in all full disclosure for everybody, my name is Janie Soberfeld. I was the professional member who heard Ms. O'Connor's case when it came for review before the board. Ms. O'Connor, but we'd already discussed that I do not need to recuse myself. This is a separate matter, correct? Okay. Ms. O'Connor, because I was a part of that original review, I want to refresh for myself, but also put in perspective for the board today, some things that I remember throughout that. When you counseled your client that you had the affair with, did you meet in person with that individual or via telehealth?
In person.
You met in person?
Yes.
In 2020?
Yes.
He was wasn't he in a facility?
Yeah, it was a residential treatment facility, a 28-day program.
And was this individual married at the time?
He was not.
He was not married? Okay. At any time, did you counsel or consult with his wife or ex-wife?
I did not.
And when this ethical violation occurred, you were an LPC associate, correct?
Yes.
And did you report to your supervisor the violation?
Not right away.
When did you report the violation to your supervisor?
It was about 3 weeks later, and I regret that.
Okay. And under what circumstances did you report to your supervisor?
I met with her every week.
I'm sorry. In reporting this violation, were you the first person to report it to your supervisor?
I was the first person to report it to my supervisor. I wasn't the first person to report it to the board.
Okay. So did you ever self-report to the board?
I did.
Okay. Who was the first person to report to the board?
I don't know.
Okay. When this violation was reported to the board, did you accept responsibility for your actions at that time?
Yes.
And you accepted the recommendations of the board?
I did not.
Okay. So you did not accept the recommendations that were made by the board?
I attempted to appeal.
You mentioned that you're part of a 12-step community. Were you a part of the 12-step community at that point?
Yes. I was in the process of getting sober, but it doesn't always happen right away.
And you had mentioned that being a part of that community is what's going to keep you from having this issue again?
Yes, one of the many factors.
And you were a part of that community at that time as well?
Yes.
Brenda, do you have some questions? Okay, go ahead.
I'm trying to read my own writing and I can't. Just briefly tell me about the basis of the appeal.
Before the revocation happened.
When the board made the recommendations and then you appealed those recommendations.
So this was maybe 6 months after the violation occurred. It was around, it's been a while and there's been many times that I've met with you guys, so I apologize. It's maybe 6 months after the violation occurred and the board recommended that I, what's it called? Like resign my license. And I really wish that I had at that time, but I guess I was just, trying to think back to who I was back then. I was really like gripping onto this license. And I really thought that this would be the thing that would connect me to the type of work that I wanted to do. And so I clung to that license and I decided not to resign it. I didn't take the recommendation. I appealed it, which led to my license ending up being revoked. And now with the clarity that I have in hindsight, I think that that was the right and appropriate action. And it's given me the opportunity to find that I actually can do the work that I want to do and I can still be helpful to people without the license. I thought that the license was going to be the thing that would make me a counselor, but it really only made me a counselor in title only. And today I'm really blessed that I get to do the healing work that I've always wanted to do. So sorry if that was a bit of a tangent. I'd like to return to your question.
And that's a good thing, Shannon. I think that, we're, always looking to hear things like, we understand dual relationships, boundaries, ethics. I think all of us here on the board have been doing this for a long time. The other notes I have here, I've gone blank. Let me get back to that.
We can come back to you.
Yeah, I've got chicken scratch on here, but I do have some notes.
Dr. Stubblefield had a follow-up question.
Ms. O'Connor, where is the client that you had the affair with today?
I terminated the relationship in January. I discontinued all connection with him and I moved to a different city.
And where is he?
I don't know.
You do not know where this client is?
I don't know exactly the details, but I did hear that he had died.
Do you know any of the circumstances around his death?
My understanding is that he died an alcoholic death, that he overdosed, but I don't know. And so I can't say with certainty anything about him because I discontinued our relationship.
Brenda, come back to you.
Oh, you said January, was that of this year?
Of 2021.
Okay, all right. What type of support system do you have?
As you can see by the character references that I submitted, I have a lot of good friends, members of my community, some family members. I would say today I'm really rich in support. I have a therapist, a sponsor, my parents, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles. I have a lot of friends. I have women that I sponsor. I have a really large recovery community. And I also have wonderful employers and coworkers. So a lot. And I also just adopted a kitten. So a lot of support.
When we were talking about grounding and, just having perfect storms, and we all have triggers about different things. Are you willing to continue staying in therapy, just deal with the triggers as they come, to learn how to be the calm of your storm,
Absolutely.
because that's what this is. It's learning how to be the calm of your storm, right? It's understanding that there's so many tragedies that take place in our life, but sometimes we learn how to set aside those tragedies to be able to focus on our clients, right? And so I just wanted to say thank you for being here today and for being transparent about it. I think the one thing I always say when we have anyone come before the board is continue counseling, because it's so important to have somebody to reach out to. We can have friends and family. Sometimes, they love us. It's hard to, separate that. And it's always better to stay with someone who's professional, who's outside of that fishbowl. Okay, so, and I think that's it for now.
Okay. Dr. Bradley?
As you know, one of our jobs here today is to try to determine if this would likely occur again. You and I both know that codes of ethics are very strict in saying, do not do this. And yet you did that. But I am glad you're here today, and I'm trying to determine whether I think this is likely to occur again. I want to go back, though, to your reporting the violation. I want you to think back. Did you do it because you felt guilty, or did you think someone was going to report you?
I would say at that point in my life, everything was driven by fear.
Everything was what?
Driven by fear.
Okay. So there was the fear that if you didn't act, someone else would.
Correct.
And then I want to go back. You couldn't have obtained a license or graduated from a program without having studied codes of ethics. Obviously, at that time, you didn't assimilate what the code was saying. What evidence can you give me now that you not only know what the code of ethics says, but you're going to abide by it? Because that's the thing I've got to be concerned with today. I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot, and I applaud you for that. But then I have to turn around and say, is it in the best welfare of the client she's going to serve? And what you did is a very serious offense.
I think the only evidence that I can provide you is that in the last 4 years, I haven't had any additional violations. I don't intend to have any additional violations. I think the best teacher is experience, and I've endured a lot of experience with violating this code of ethics. But I can understand your concern. I think it's a really valid concern that I did it once. So how do you know with sureness that I wouldn't again, other than my word that I'm saying I wouldn't and that I haven't in the last 4 years? But I don't know that I can honestly give any other evidence. So I think that that's a valid statement.
If I were to ask you, are you willing to obtain over the next 5 years X number of credits by going to workshops, webinars in ethics? I mean, obviously, I've got to be concerned that you'd been taught at one point and yet you broke the code. So are you going to be willing to obtain more credits specifically in ethics and ethical decision making?
Absolutely. I would go to any lengths to right my wrongs.
Thank you.
Jen, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think it speaks volumes that you showed up here today. I do think it takes an incredible amount of courage to put your mistakes on display in front of the world and some professionals. And I like how you answered Dr. Amuna's question. And I think everyone here that does education, that's a very good point. The level of intimacy that you're just not prepared for it. And I appreciate all the work you've done. I think you have a lot of value, and I think it speaks volumes that you have an individual that if she were able to put her license on the line for you, that she would do it. And so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Board, we have three choices. The first one, we can direct staff to continue with Ms. O'Connor's application process. Second one, we can direct staff to continue the application process with stipulations. And our third option is we can deny the application, and Ms. O'Connor would then appeal to SOA. Those are our three options. Robert?
And just to point out for the board, due to the hours that Ms. O'Connor has already accumulated, if proceeding with no restrictions or nothing else, she would be eligible for a full LPC license. She would not be an associate.
Okay.
But certainly it sounds like she's open to discussions, and the board that could be a restriction you could discuss to return to being an associate.
Dr. Minna?
And I have a question regarding our jurisdiction of a restriction. Given the intimate nature of that storm, my concern would be face-to-face interaction with clients for now. Do we have the jurisdiction to say that you would agree to only see clients virtually for a certain period of time, or is that outside of our ability to act?
Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, I would say if you were to put a restriction, it would need to be through an eligibility order, and it would need to be an agreed order. So if Ms. O'Connor agreed to the conditions in the order and the board signed off on those conditions as well, yes. The short answer to your question is yes, but it would need to be agreed. If something goes to SOA, you don't have that sort of flexibility in an agreed eligibility order, but you can put any particular restrictions, terms, limitations, as long as all the parties agree to it.
And excuse me, that's actually an important point. To the looking at the file here, one nuance, Ms. Clement raised that there are examples of agreed orders that did not revoke someone's license. There certainly are those out there. They were different cases and different boards. Your packet has other orders where the person's license was revoked and not eligible to reapply for 10 years. Those were all agreed orders. They were eligibility orders. In this instance, because the appeal made its way through SOA, there could not be any of that detail in the SOA order. SOA is just revoked or not. And so that's why in Ms. O'Connor's case, it doesn't have any of that guidance of how long must you wait until you reapply or get a license.
And to that point, Ms. O'Connor, were you given that opportunity to, in that initial agreed order, to resign your license and then reapply in 10 years?
Yes.
And you chose not to accept that agreed order?
Really wish I had, but
Okay.
I did not.
And from there, you did appeal to SOA, correct?
I did.
And what was SOA's recommendation? I'll help you. Was SOA's recommendation revocation of your license?
I think so.
Yes. And then did you appeal to this full board?
Yes.
And what was the recommendation of this full board at that time?
This board has continuously decided to revoke my license.
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
Yeah.
This is absolutely insane. I mean, that you want to say what I said was out of order, Robert. I haven't even mentioned the voicemail, and the reason I'm on Zoom is because of a death threat.
Mr. Shakarami, please limit your discussion to board matters.
Okay, I am, but how can you be questioned like that from someone with that much knowledge of a past case and not have to recuse yourself? That line of questioning was completely unfair. So, I'm making a motion to reinstate her license.
Wait a minute. What are you referring to? Who said what?
Who are you saying?
Dr. Stubblefield's line of questioning had so much information from a past case. It's unbelievable that she doesn't have to recuse herself from this. Now, I understand from a legal perspective, it's two
this
separate
case.
matters, but
this case.
then only this case should be able to be brought up, not the stuff with SOA, not her decisions from 2 years ago that was probably affected by outside legal counsel and all the other things. Like that was one of the most unfair lines of questioning I've ever heard.
Good information.
And it's completely inappropriate because if it's two
Mr.
separate
Sakuragi,
matters, then you
we're
can't bring
speaking
that
on
other
Miss O-
matter into
We're
it.
not speaking about other cases. We're speaking about Miss
The
O'Connor's.
line of questioning came from the separate matter of Shannon O'Connor. But if you're not going to recuse yourself, then you have to stay on this case, not the past case. You cannot bring up questions based on the past case if you're not going to recuse yourself. It's totally inappropriate.
So the question of whether it is germane, the question of whether it is germane and allowable, there's nothing procedurally inappropriate about discussing it. Certainly, whether it is appropriate or advisable, that is open to.
Then if the other matter is going to be brought up in a line of questioning for this matter, then Dr. Stubblefield should have to recuse herself. Otherwise, she should only keep her line of questioning on this specific matter, not the past matter, not the SOA appeal, not anything from that past matter. You cannot mix the two.
I'll defer to our legal.
Patrick.
So there's a council rule 881.5, and it talks about recusals and conflicts of interest. And that specifically talks about a board member that sat at an ISC, and when there's a contested case matter, then they would recuse whenever the matter goes to SOA and then comes back to the board for a final decision. That matter was fully adjudicated and then appealed to district court, and it was settled. So that matter was closed.
Yeah, okay, correct. That past matter where the SOA appeal was made was closed. It's moved on. In a court of law, Dr. Stubblefield's line of questioning would have been dismissed, and that would not be permissible because the other case has no bearing on this case. So if Dr. Stubblefield wants to engage in this line of questioning, it needs to be on this matter and this single matter alone. And I'd also advise Dr. Stubblefield to put that type of line of questioning to Ms. Clement, which is the person's legal counsel.
Okay.
Okay.
And so I motion to reinstate her
And
license.
Ms. Clement, I'm happy to direct any future questions toward you.
I'm happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
So Mr.
We do have a motion.
There is a motion on the floor.
Okay. Mr. Shakarami has made a motion that we essentially grant the license. With the hours that have been accrued, this would be an approval of the license. Is there a second to Mr. Shakarami's motion? Okay. Seeing none, we will go back and see if anyone else would like to make a different motion. Dr. Bradley?
Can't get this. I would like to make a motion that we grant the license, but with specific restrictions.
Okay. What would you want to elaborate on which restrictions you would want to see?
I want the restrictions to be things that the board believes is in her best interest and could help her. For example, to continue therapy. A second thing would be to take additional training in ethics. And then the third thing would be a report back to the board.
Dr. Bradley, if I may, I would also like to add, if again within our jurisdiction, I would also like to add, if it's within our jurisdiction, that we put a time limit, and I'm open to reception, on the modality of practice being restricted to online counseling. If that's something that
I can accept that, yes.
So the time limit is what my issue and concern. At this point, I'm looking at maybe 2 years. If that's too lenient or not long enough, I'm receptive to the board.
I would have gone for 3 years.
I'm okay with that.
And I would have said 1.
Okay.
But
Council.
If I might request, given this, what you're essentially talking about is an agreed order, is an eligibility order. That will take some negotiation and discussion with Ms. O'Connor and her attorney, Ms. Clement. If I could gently suggest that the board's motion be to instruct staff to seek an agreed order along these lines and give us the flexibility to negotiate to get the terms.
I think that sounds good.
I second that if it's a formal motion allowed.
This is Daryl Spinks, the executive director for BHEC. I'm off camera, so I'm going to identify myself. But let me make one recommendation if we're going to go down this route, and you can take it or leave it. But if we're going to put a restriction on the modality in the order, I would recommend that y'all at least discuss whether or not there is the option for early termination of that, because here we are discussing a revocation for a very serious offense that carries some pretty grave, carries the death penalty for licensure. And we are talking about an early termination of what would otherwise be a permanent revocation of a license. So if you don't want to find yourself back here, you know, she may say, well, 6 months from now, my therapist says this is fine. I don't need this. And we may be back here yet again talking about how she's done all these corrective measures and we're having to readdress this thing again. So the only thing I would suggest is if you're going to do this, make it clear that this is not subject to early termination, that if you mean it, you mean it. That's my only recommendation there.
I certainly agree with that because I'm serious on what I said in the motion.
Okay, Vanessa, go ahead.
I just have a question based on what Daryl said. As a public member, would it be okay for a client to know that their therapist created an egregious act of this nature that, like you said, is punitive as a kind of severing their relationship in the therapeutic field, to find out that the board allowed this person to take some corrective measures and reestablish them? Is this a precedent that we're going to be able to live with over the years with other people committing the same type of act?
And I have to build
From
on
a
that.
public perspective, I don't know. I'm just asking from a public member's perspective.
And I have to build on that because I'm extremely confused, because when I read through every single thing before I get on these meetings, when I read through Ms. Clement's files, I saw numerous examples of similar behavior, similar misconduct, and having completely different outcomes and that were not full revocation. So now I'm understanding that everyone who does what Shannon did, their license is revoked and they never get it again, or maybe it's 10 years potentially. And then we had a line of questioning based on a past case that completely muddies the waters because it's really supposed to just be on this case. And so, like, how are we even supposed to vote clear-headed? Like I said, in a court of law, this would have probably been a mistrial at this point.
Dr. Bradley, would you like to restate your motion with the proposed amendments to it?
Well, let me see if I can. I think I can do that. I make the motion that the license be granted with specific restrictions. And I'm open to the board giving some additional comments. I want to incorporate what Attorney Spinks said in terms of the time.
Yeah. And I just had a question. I just thought about the fact that this is an LPCA that we are reinstating, or
she will get a full license.
So this
She
one-
has
Full license.
'cause my concern was if we are reinstating an LPCA and then she's eligible for an LPC, does all of these requirements get washed under the water? So it will be for the LPC.
Correct.
Correct
Full
me if
LPC.
I'm wrong, but I thought I was making a motion for an LPC full
Yeah.
license.
And I was just asking for clarification. So you're correct. I was just asking for clarification.
Okay.
Even if it were
The
an
motion's
LPCA,
been made.
it would follow.
Okay, Dr. Bradley has made a motion. Ms. Campanoni has seconded it. Is there a discussion on the motion? I want to be absolutely clear on what the motion's stipulations are.
Can we confirm a timeline of online? And so we don't have to, because we're gonna provide that
If I-
via liability to.
If I could restate what I understand the motion to be, and y'all can correct me, is that Dr. Bradley has moved and it has been seconded that board staff be directed to pursue approval of the LPC license with Ms. O'Connor and negotiate the terms of an agreed order that contain up to and including continued therapy, extra ethics CEs, reporting back to the board on progress, a restriction to online practice only for a minimum of 1 year, but perhaps as long as 3 years. That whatever the ultimate agreement is that is reached is not subject to modification or early termination.
Is that for an LPC associate license or is it for an LPC license?
I think I
LPC.
made the motion for an LPC license.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that
Mr. Chair.
clarification.
But I'm having a little bit of trouble here. So we're going to, staff are going to be authorized to negotiate this, but we've just outlined what the guideposts, what the end posts are. So, I guess what I'm afraid of is Ms. Clement, Ms. O'Connor are sitting here here's your negotiating range. You can go as low as this, but you can't go higher than this. Why would they ever agree to anything higher than the minimum there?
I guess maybe it's worth asking Ms. O'Connor. Now, my worry about the online restriction is I don't know what her job is. She may be in an in-person clinic or in-person setting where she could not agree to that without quitting her job. And so.
Can we ask that?
Absolutely, you can ask it.
Yeah. So currently my job is actually as a recovery manager. It is in person, but it's not a job that requires a license. And then I also do online mentorship, which is kind of like it's sort of like coaching with clients who are based in Ohio. So that wouldn't affect, unless I was to get another job where it would be more of a counseling profession, and then I would just look for an online one.
So would a part of that agreement be, and forgive me for sounding a little flippant, if she were to get a job at Target, we wouldn't restrict that because it's not counseling related. But if you're going to engage in any coaching or counseling related areas, that those would be restricted to online modality.
We don't have
Anything-
jurisdiction over a coach. Like, again,
anything-
this is getting ridiculous.
Anything using her license.
Anything using her license. Thank you.
And so in the interest of specificity, is the average between 1 and 3 is 2 years?
I would probably just stick with 3 because if it's a range, because he's asking the range. Again, if it were me, if I were given a range, I would say 1. If I were choosing between 1 and 3, and so do we stronghold a certain time period? Because range isn't really range. Kind of to Daryl's point, I don't know many people who would say, "Yeah, give me the maximum." So as a board, do we decide an actual number? I know Jen is 1, I'm 3, Dr. Bradley is 2. Do we meet somewhere in the middle? Brenda?
Shannon? 1, 2, or 3?
All right, Brenda, that's
Just
our
curious.
decision. That's our decision.
Oh, I was just curious about how she felt about it.
I don't even think I'm in a position of negotiation, so I'm just grateful that you guys are even considering reinstatement with stipulation. So it's, up to your discretion.
So
The reason
Go ahead, Dr. Bradley.
I said 2 years I want to be sure that we're fair to you and that we're doing this to help you. But I also want to be sure that we're protecting the clients that you may serve. I'm not sure I can get that information in 1 year.
And Dr. Bradley, I'm comfortable with your vast knowledge and time on this board with coming down from 3 to 2 as far as time modality online. But we got to talk to Jen because she recommended 1.
Well, again, I'm just a public member, so I'm kind of
Not
learning
just.
as I go.
No,
But
Jen,
no,
Jen,
thank you.
our role,
No, thank you.
Jen, it's our job to take a look at something and say that does not look right. I understand that, well, that there's rules here, there's stipulations there, but as a public member, that does not look right. That's our job.
Well, I would say I would defer to Dr. Bradley. I think she's usually pretty spot on, and I do think you're willing to do the work.
Board, before we get closer to a vote, I'm sorry, and Ms. O'Connor, I'm sorry, I cannot support. I cannot support licensure even with the stipulations. My role as a public member, I look at this, and if I were to if it was on the news tonight, what happened, and that the board reapproved your license, as the public member in me, I can't go that far. I apologize. You sound like you've come a long way. To me, it's still too soon. I'm 1 vote of 9. But that's where I am on this. I cannot go that far at this point. That being said, I will honor that there is a motion and a second to that.
There's comment from Vanessa and I think Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, go ahead, Vanessa.
I just want to go back and rephrase what I asked earlier after Daryl spoke. I was asking from a public's perspective, and it's in alignment with what you just said, Chairman Haubauer, that if she committed an egregious act in this profession, it appears, and what it sounds like to me as a public member, that the board is trying to make some changes to customize correction for this particular person, when I think we have more strength to say she already committed the egregious act and we have to make a decision on that. Otherwise, we're going to constantly find ourselves as a board trying to customize corrective actions for people when they create these egregious acts. It does not give strength to the rules and the regulations. And so why do we have them if we can only find ways of giving people outs so that they don't have to live up to the consequences? And I'm concerned, just as a public member, I couldn't in clear conscience and ethics make a decision to reinstate this particular person. And I understand all that she has done. And I'm sure that she's learned the valuable lessons, but I just can't see myself reinstating it.
Dr. Taylor, did you have a comment?
No, I just want to thank Ms. O'Connor for coming. I know it's very difficult to sit there and go through this in a public forum, so thank you for being here. I do agree with Dr. Bradley. I think it's difficult, but we need more therapists. I think she's learned a lot, and I think some supervision and some restrictions for the first few years would be warranted, and we go from there.
And I just want to clarify for Vanessa, because I'm still wondering too. Has this, every single time, the license has been revoked and never reinstated? So what we read in the file of the evidence from Ms. Clement, is that made up? Someone here has to know. Because I read several other cases of sexual misconduct, similar misconduct where the license was actually just suspended or put on probation.
That is correct. The potential revocation is the upper limit on
Okay.
the
So
there, and each for as hard as it is, for good reason, every case is an individual case. And so it is
correct.
circumstances of the case, and that is what has led to the board's action on revocation or something else.
Okay. Okay. And just for my knowledge, because I do think it's very relevant, if you're in front of a judge in either civil or criminal court and a past case has been thrown out or it's already been decided, can an attorney or legal counsel bring up the facts of the case that is no longer permissible in the new matter?
Yes.
They
Yeah,
can.
there are
Okay.
many circumstances under which the prior actions are admissible and discussed. All of the line of questioning today would be admissible.
Okay.
Okay. We do have a motion and we do have a second. If there's no further discussion, I would like a specific clarification on the stipulations that we're considering, and then we will take a vote.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to direct staff to enter an agreed order with Ms. O'Connor, granting an LPC license with the stipulations that for 2 years, she be limited to online interactions with clients under her license only, that she continue therapy, that she pursue, and this wasn't specified, so I'm going to just say 12 hours of ethics CE, and that she provide semi-annual reports to the board about her progress.
And failure to meet these requirements would result in?
A revocation. And this agreement's not subject to early termination. That is the motion.
Okay. And at this time, we will go ahead and take a vote. I want to be very clear on the numbers on the vote. So all in favor of Dr. Bradley's motion with the identified specific stipulations, please raise your hand.
And keep them up, please.
Okay. The 5 in favor and all opposed, same motion. Three opposed. And Dr. Muna, are you abstaining?
No, she was in favor.
Oh, you voted in favor?
I'll say that I voted in favor and I'm conflicted. I know it's mid-vote, but I'm very much conflicted.
But you did vote though?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
6-3, the motion passes.
6-3.
Thank you very much for taking your time. I know this is a very busy meeting and I appreciate your time and attention to Ms. O'Connor's issue.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure Ms. O'Connor and Ms. Clement are clear. If you do not accept this agreed order, your application will be denied. Okay? You understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It is 10:42. We are going to take a 5-minute break at this point. So go ahead, stop recording. We are on hold for 5 minutes as of 10:42. We will reconvene at 10:47 a.m. Thank you. Go ahead and thank you. I would like to call us back into session. It is now 10:53 a.m. This is the continuing meeting of the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors, and we are back in session. At this point, we'll go into item number 8, examination matters. Christina, will you bring this to our attention, please?
In your board packet material, you all were provided with the responses and feedback from the jurisprudence exam. As you can see, most of them, they do appreciate the exam, and many of them supported the questions that may not be relevant to them just because they are supposed to know all the questions. So if it's someone that's an associate versus a supervisor. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And otherwise, that's just for your information.
Any questions?
No question, just comment. It was great to see all the positive responses.
Mhm.
So kudos to you and all the work that you all do.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. Let's go to number 9, enforcement matters.
There's currently no enforcement matters that need to be taken by the board today.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to 10A. These are up for adoption today. Like I mentioned in my BHEC update, BHEC did approve our rule changes. This was the first batch of the quadrennial rule review change. It's the housekeeping items. There were not any changes to BHEC did not make any changes to what we passed at our prior meeting. So these are going to be up for adoption today. And after that, what's the next steps following adoption?
They will be proposed for adoption and be heard at the February 18th council meeting. And if they approve adoption, then they will be adopted.
Okay. Board, any questions? Okay. Robert, we can take 1 through 10 collectively, can't we?
Correct.
Okay. I need a motion to adopt items 1 through 10, that is 681.37 all the way through 681.205 listed in 10A 1 through 10.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield and Dr. Amuna with the second. All in favor of the adoption of these changes, please raise your hand, signify. Okay, all in favor and all opposed? Mr. Shakarami, did you abstain? I apologize. Was that a nay vote?
No, sorry. I was trying to vote to approve the motion.
Okay, thank you. Then that was unanimous. Okay. At this point, as you recall it, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are now going to discuss item 10B. First of all, I'm going to hand it over to staff for explanation and background regarding this proposed change. And then at that point, we will take public comment. So at this time, Robert, can you explain where staff is coming from on this?
Absolutely. Would you like me to address the one that no one's here for, I don't believe, first or second? The 681.72 is the...
Let's do that first.
Do that first. Okay. So this one's a quick one. The staff, this is actually a response that we got through the rule review process. Lots of requests that we consider removing the expiration of the supervisor course. That there are folks who are getting it in school, and then particularly the problematic time frame, if you get the course in school and then you cannot try to be a supervisor for 5 years, it automatically expires before you're eligible to be a supervisor. We have not seen any problems, particularly with folks coming in from out of state with older courses that have become supervisors. So staff does not see any particular problems with removing the expiration date. And therefore, if there's no reason to keep people out, we suggest allowing them in.
In terms of the comments that we received online, there were 2 comments that opposed this.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I spoke a little out of turn. There may be someone here in the public that did want to speak on this. Certainly welcome to ask.
Okay. Ms. Hollingsworth?
All right. Chair Heilbauer and board members, again, thank you for the opportunity to make public comments.
I did want to speak to the rule 681, 140, where,
No,
What-
we're just doing 72 right now.
oh, then I'm at the wrong one.
We'll come back to you.
Okay.
We're just,
681.72 is to remove the 5-year limitation on the LPC supervisor training course.
Yes,
And
I
we're not
wrote the
talking
wrong
about-
rule down. That's the one I did want to speak to. though.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
that's all right.
Tomka does welcome the proposed amendment to remove the expiration provisions related to the supervision training courses required for the application of supervisor status.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Noah, do you want to speak? Okay. Other members in our, okay.
I have a couple hands that I believe
okay.
that came up once you said that, so I believe so. First person, so Britt Hudson. Again, this is just related to the proposed rule 681.72.
Sorry, my hand's raised for the other rule discussion
Okay.
for today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
Okay, Kate Walker.
Ms. Walker, do you have public comment related to the proposed 681.72?
Oh, sorry. I was muted. Sorry.
And
Can you hear
sorry,
me now?
Britt, raise your hand again.
Yeah,
so you
sorry about
can-
that. That was my fault.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Okay.
Kate.
You can hear me. Okay, sorry about that. So I meant to ask you this when you were presenting the other day. I just wanted clarification. Is this, when you say supervisor course, are you talking solely about the doc course, the graduate course, or are you talking about the postgraduate course that is basically 40 CEs?
Both. This would remove the 5-year expiration of the graduate school course and the 2-year expiration of the CE course.
40-hour supervision course. Yeah.
Okay, then I want to go on record. I think I put this in written comments, but I wasn't sure. I am opposed to getting rid of the 2-year expiration date for the 40-hour training. Just because, I mean, like, it's not uncommon for there to be 3 revisions a year to our rules. And the fact that the LPC can cover the LMFT supervisor course, it's just a lot to keep up with. And it is 40 CEs, so that means it falls under continuing education, which, you know, that does have an expiration date. Those CEs do have expiration, so I don't see why the 40-hour course would be treated any differently. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else online?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Okay.
Next person we have is Leanne Solomson, sorry.
Hi, excuse me this morning, my voice is not great. This may be the result of 6 hours of supervision yesterday online. So I am opposed to the removal of the expiration dates on both the doc course and the 40-hour training, partly for what Kate has said, that I think that there are changes that occur. There's also nothing in that doctoral level course that says that it has to meet the same requirements as the 40-hour CE course. And so we're not sure that those doctoral courses are covering the same content that are required for those of us who teach the CE course. Many of those doc students are still LPC associates themselves, and they may not complete their supervised requirement for several years until after they graduate. I've seen that with colleagues a number of times. I believe that there's enough changes that occur that those courses need to be current. Just anecdotally, if you look at our Texas Supervisor Coalition group, there are frequently people who come on that say, I'm taking on my first supervisee, and it's been a number of years since I had my course, and I need they already have that supervisor credential, and they're saying, I need some help with this. I had a consultation session yesterday with someone who is a supervisor, but has not supervised in over 5 years. And she wanted to go over to make sure that she was up to date on that. There's no requirement that they do that. That I applaud those people who did that. And, we're up and up about, I need some refresher. There's nothing that says they have to do that. So I believe that that information should be current. There is no higher responsibility that we have than supervising an LPC associate. We are shaping the practice that they will have and the impact that they have on their clients. And so I think that that needs to be held to a very high standard. So I believe that those timelines and those expiration dates need to stay in place. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Next person is Diane Smedley.
Again, how are y'all? My name is Dr. Diane Smedley. I will just quickly cut since I've already introduced myself earlier. I am the TASIS liaison to the board. I do want to say that I actually applaud the board for finding a balance between supervisor quality and supervisor quantity. We know that there's a big shortage of supervisors out there who are actively supervising and stay in the field as supervisors. And so by removing the expiration date while maintaining current standards such as numbers of years of experience, so on and so forth, this does show a dedication to increasing the number of available but also qualified supervisors. I do ask for a point of clarification regarding the doctoral course. This is something that I get questioned quite a bit by those out in the field. I don't have the rule in front of me, but it essentially says the successful completion of a doctoral course. However, it is unclear exactly what that means. Does that mean that the entire terminal degree needs to be completed, or does the course just have to show completed on the transcript? So if we could get some kind of clarification, because this could allow people who aren't finished completely with the terminal degree, but have completed the course itself to apply for that credential sooner. That would just be great information to know. Otherwise, thank you all.
Thank you.
And I believe it should be just successful completion of the course. So a transcript showing graduate credit has been received.
And the last online we have is Dr. Kathy Ibanez.
Hello, board. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. My name is Dr. Kathy Ibanez Llorente. I had a question, and maybe more a point of clarification as well. I know sometimes we have, let's say, for example, faculty members who may be board-approved supervisors in another state and then move to Texas, and the prior rule may have affected their ability to become approved supervisors here in the state of Texas. The elimination of the 5-year rule might help them, might facilitate their becoming a supervisor here in Texas. So from that perspective, this removal would be helpful. Is the intent to help from I guess a processing perspective, to be able to process people's supervision applications from another state? If it is, then I do agree with that piece, but I do also agree with Dr. Salmonson's point and Dr. Walker's point about receiving training and then not supervising for a very long time and not staying abreast with supervision changes or really just supervising practices. So I guess I'm kind of on the fence on both sides of this. So I don't know that it's helpful, but I think there is another piece that might be missing from the rules regarding people who are board-approved supervisors in another state and then coming to Texas and being able to be approved supervisors here in our state, and making that process easier. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have for public comment.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Want me to share these?
Sure, go ahead.
I was just going to let the board know that the two comments that came via online on the amazing spreadsheet that Miss Christina put together for us, it is comment number 241 and comment number 266. And the essence of comment 241 says that while they may have received the training, if there's that gap, they're not receiving ongoing CEs, where all other supervisors are required to obtain CEs every renewal period. And then the second comment was combined with something, so I just wanted to refresh. I think that's essentially the essence of the second comment.
How, your professional members, how would you, that's Dr. Bacon who submitted number 241. How would you address the concerns that she brings up on this? Basically, possibility of a large gap in the supervision education. Is that a concern?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
So just from staff's perspective, in terms of how we oversee this regulatorily, requiring the training is an objective component we can look at. While I hear those points about the gap in time of the training to when you supervise, we do see a number of people right now who get their supervisor status and then go a long time without supervising anyone.
Right, but they're doing C.
They are doing CEUs. We also see folks from out of state that are coming, and some with courses that are very long ago and have been actively supervising, or at least holding a supervisor status. We can't really verify to what degree they are being a supervisor or not, and the quality of that experience. And so that it is a little difficult to, beyond just requiring a objective, did you take this course? It is hard to quantify how well trained they continue to be in if there's a gap in service. That's a difficult thing. Certainly, once you have supervisor status, having the CE is designed to keep you current on the rules, and that is a good thing.
Okay.
I'd like to hear public member comments on someone getting supervisor training in 2000 and then not supervising until like 2020, if they think that that training needs to be current or different, or I'm just curious.
It is not a concern for me.
I don't know how big of a concern it is, but I do have a question for the professional members. My understanding is things change. There's, some of it was a good example is earlier. There's updated modalities, there's updated therapies. I know that there's new types of therapies that weren't as popular 10, 15 years ago. EMDR might be an example of it. I actually kind of lean towards the side that we do need the 5-year, but I'd like to hear just a little bit more from the professional members on how things get updated and what they think.
Go ahead, Dr. Bradley.
Maybe I should speak up on this. I taught this course when I was at Vanderbilt, and I teach it at Texas Tech. The 5-year rule is problematic because you have doctoral students that the clock is ticking, and the last course in our program that they take is the counselor supervision. Other programs, it may be earlier. So they've lost their time clock. With regard, our committee is seeing, and I think Christina can vouch for this, several applications that Kathy spoke about, and that is they're in another state. They're trying to come into our state, and they've missed the 5-year time frame. The issue for me is if we as a board could come up with something. I have a concern if they took the course and they've done nothing with it in 10 years. But I don't have a concern if they've been supervising, say in Oklahoma, during that period. So to me is what has happened. Now, I think it's a different issue with doctoral students. I think they get penalized because programs insist that they take the course at a certain time and the clock starts clicking. And their major objective in a doctoral program is complete their coursework, then their dissertation. Most people, it takes a year to 2 years, even longer sometimes, to complete a dissertation. So they've lost this time. So I think we've got two different issues here presented from two different groups.
Yeah.
Mhm. And for me, I guess I should end by saying, what have they been doing in the meantime? If they've been supervising and that sort of thing, that's one thing. If the training is on the shelf, for me, that's a different thing.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, just giving y'all options. You have the option of proposing the rule as is. You have the option of proposing the rule with the expectation that you will take comments and change it, although that will require additional proposal. You have the option of referring it back to the Rules Committee with direction to address these issues. Those are all, or just
Okay.
or just say no. You have that option too.
Go ahead.
My recommendation would be to take it back to the Rules Committee. But if you were asking me whether or not I would keep or eliminate the 5 years, I'd eliminate it. But I'm hoping to find a middle ground that serves both groups. We've got to look out for the welfare of the supervisees they're supervising. And I think there's a way to do that.
Okay. Personally, from my perspective, if there is a barrier for someone to achieve or to reach their supervisor status, and if we can remove that barrier without creating a substantial risk of harm to the public, I'm for removing that barrier. That is my position on it as a public member. I do not think that getting rid of this deadline leads to danger for the public. That's not a connection that I can really make. And if it's a barrier for our supervisors, especially, it sounds like the common situation is someone coming in from out of state, which lots of people are doing. I'm for removal of that barrier.
I agree.
Go ahead, sir. You can go ahead.
I just said I agree, Chair Hallbearer.
I was just going to say, I'm going to acknowledge point of bias. So I was actually one of these individuals who was a supervisor in an outside state for years and then came here and had to wait the 5 year. So I'm putting that out there publicly that I was that person. But I will say that I was grateful for the mandatory education, that 40 hours. I was not pleased with the 5 year wait, but I do understand that time to get acclimated to the way Texas does things. And so I agree that barriers should be eliminated, having that been a barrier for me. But I do recommend having it go back to the Rules Committee to maybe tease out a standard for out of state, a standard for doctoral students, and then a standard for everyone else.
How complicated does that make things?
does it?
We do as directed.
Okay. I've given my position on it. I'm for removal of barriers if I don't see how it's going to lead to harm. But this is a 9-member board, and if there's further discussion, we will continue. Otherwise, I need some sort of motion.
I motion to get rid of the 5-year rule.
Okay. So Mr. Shakarami has made a motion that we approve the proposed amendment as written without any changes or without requiring any additional details. Is there a second to that motion? I can second it, correct? Then I provide the second, that we accept the amendment as proposed. So we do have a motion to accept the amendment and a second. We will have discussion on that as the motion as presented. Dr. Bradley?
I want to make it clear that I'm in favor of removing barriers. And so that if I only had one thing to say today, to keep it or remove it, I would say remove it. But I think the wiseness of the Rules Committee could give us some additional comments or some additional information, and that's why I want to hear what they have to say. I am not against removing it. I just want to see if there's a better alternative.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bradley.
I'll concur with what Dr. Bradley says. I'm definitely not against removing it because it would have made life much easier for me. I am interested in hearing what Dr. Taylor has to say.
Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Mina. Thank you for your wisdom, Dr. Bradley. It's always welcomed and very needed. So thank you for that. This came from the Rules Committee. So, we discussed this. We felt that it was in line with the other changes that we have made recently, such as removal of the academic clock, the other restrictions we had that were sort of causing issues in the applications process. Those seem to have been successful over the last few years. And also, this is a proposed rule. So we welcome public comment on this rule if it is passed. It will go to public comment. So it's not done yet. And so if we get, some really great feedback about some things we didn't think about, then we can always just pull the rule and reevaluate.
Good point. Thank you, Dr. Taylor.
No, I would say initially on its merits, like everybody, I'm not in opposition of removing the 5 years, but with the comments that we're not in support of it, it's making me think about, giving it that second look. Because it seems like we have the one rule applying across the board, and there may be 3 distinct categories of individuals applying for that supervision status that maybe the rules need to vet out some clarity for. But I'm not in opposition, but more clarity, I think.
Okay.
Same. I'd like to see it come back to the Rules Committee.
Okay. We do have a motion and a second, and we will take a vote, and we will proceed from there based on the vote. So all in favor of accepting the proposed amendment to 681.72, the changes removing the 5-year deadline, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Yeah.
And that is 6 in favor. And all 7? Oh, my bad. I'm bad at math. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Ms. Campanone.
It would be good because I just really wanted to see it come
Okay.
back to.
Remember, this is the start of the process.
Yeah.
Okay. This means we're going to move forward, but that doesn't mean that this is the final product. Okay. 2 abstentions on the vote. Okay. And now moving forward with agenda item 10B, number 2, requirements for continuing education. I'm going to hand this to Robert for some background and for some explanation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pardon me, I've been a little under the weather, so if I cough through this, I apologize. To give everyone a little context, I know there's been a lot of interest and concern about this rule or this proposal. The origin of the cultural competency requirement stems back to the 2011 to 2016 state health plan that initially introduced the idea that as our state grows in population, it also grows in diversity. And the needs, both the medical and mental health needs of our population, will grow and change as that happens. And it introduced the idea that all medical and mental health care providers need to be competent to serve the people that they are serving, and a recognition that not everyone receives either medical or mental health care in the same way, and that understanding those populations and the cultural differences is very important. After that report came out, it was actually the psychology board that first adopted this continuing education rule over a decade ago, before the boards were merged. And so it was the first to say this concept of being competent to provide services to the populations you serve is very important and is distinct from being competent in the practice itself, that it is a distinct idea. We'll jump ahead to BHEC and its creation, and when the other 3 boards came on board as part of the initial merging and standardization. One of the conversations was this continuing education rule, and all 3 other boards adopted this same concept that providers, in addition to getting regular training on the subjects of their profession, on the modalities, on the treatment methods, they also need to continue to be well-trained in providing services to the diverse populations they may serve. Since that time, unfortunately, over the past year, the nature of this requirement has gotten misunderstood and misinterpreted and been subject to lots of speculation on at this board meeting, at other board meetings, on social media, in newsletters. And despite staff's best efforts at lunch hours, at conference presentations, there continues to be misunderstanding about what this rule does and does not require across the spectrum. And so in the comments that you've seen just in the last few days, there are those who believe the requirement is that you must receive training specifically in what they describe as woke or DEI, using in a negative inference. There are also those that say this requirement is requiring education in, again, the phrase DEI, in a positive framing. There are those that believe it is requiring training in multicultural, not competency of care, but knowledge of multiple cultures. And unfortunately, all of this means that the rule the board has put out, the rule that all the boards have put out, this is the same across the board, is not being understood by the licensee population. And from a regulatory perspective, a rule that is not consistently understood is not good. We need to have a clear rule out there. So staff has brought this forward to keep the essence of the requirement, the underlying goal that the boards and all the boards share, which is that as a licensed provider, you need to be competent not only in the practices that you are giving, whether that be play therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, other therapeutic practices, but also in the populations that you serve. You need to be competent in understanding how they receive treatment and what their needs are. And so that's what this language is designed to do, is to clarify the essence of what the requirement has always been, which is that if you are going to provide services to another individual, it is incumbent on you as the provider to understand who that individual is and what services they're seeking. And so that is why we've brought this forward. It is a broadening of the language, but getting at essentially the same essence of what the rule was always intended to do and has been operating as. Many licensees have gone the last several years getting the variety of cultural competency trainings beyond the list of attributes that was currently in the rule. And that's absolutely appropriate and is what the rule, the amendments to the rule is designed to clarify that, yes, that is many traits. And so this is designed to say, if you are serving veterans, you need to get training on veterans. If you are serving young mothers, you need to get training in the prenatal population. If you are serving rural America and farmers, you need to get training to understand how they receive services. That is an important facet of this work and of your work as a licensee. And all 4 boards in the council continue to believe that is important and is why this change is in the rule. So I wanted to share that context of what we are actually doing so that it's at least clear. I know there has been lots of concern, but that is what the rule change is intended to do.
Okay. Right before we go to public comment, any initial questions regarding Robert's explanation? Jenny?
I'd like to share.
Yeah.
And so this is the part of my Rules Committee report regarding 681.140. First, and this is based on reading all the comments that came in, this proposal was not a proposal to remove any CEU requirement. It was in light of the confusion as has been shared by some counselors as well as members of the public regarding the long-established need for multicultural counseling competency, that the committee desired to keep the substantive meaning of the rule without, maybe having the trigger words in there. Not sure we found that balance because of the volume of comments that came in. There's still a lot of confusion. But first, I want to clarify, the proposal was not to remove a requirement. It was to change language to try and provide that clarity. I think we still need to keep working on that personally. Do you want to break down of the comments?
Not until we take.
Okay.
Not until we take the public comment.
You meant statistically, just the numbers.
Right. Yeah, I have a breakdown number-wise of the comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we received 276 comments through the website. 14 were related to other topics. So 262 comments were related to Rule 681.140. Of those 262 comments, 4 supported the removal of the requirement, and 258 comments supported keeping the current rule. Additionally, we received 3 comments via email, not through the comment section. Of those 3 email comments, 1 supported the removal of the requirement and 2 supported keeping the current rule.
Okay.
That's a statistical breakdown.
Okay. All right. This time we'll go ahead and go into public comment. We will start with those out in the audience today, and then we will move to people who'd like to comment online. Again, you have 3 minutes for your comment.
And if I can just remind everyone, make sure and introduce yourself. And if you're speaking on behalf of an organization, please mention that, or if you're doing it for yourself. Thank you. We'll start with Ms. Hollingsworth.
All right. I'm Dr. Lori Hollingsworth, licensed professional counselor supervisor. I'm also serving as the president of the Texas Mental Health Counselors Association, TOMCA. I'd like to address Rule 681-140 and the proposed amendment regarding the 3 hours of CEs to ensure competency in providing services to a distinct population defined as a group of people who share a common attribute, trait, or defining characteristic. TOMCA members will continue to serve all Texas citizens, which comprises a kaleidoscope of diverse individuals and families with unique needs, life experiences, backgrounds, cultures, and self-determined goals for their future. The breadth of the proposed amendment leaves ample opportunity for counselors to seek continuing education that will provide skills and knowledge so counselors can ethically serve concentrated populations and clients. This latitude to seek specialized and focused continuing education is essential, so counselors are adept and competent to meet the needs of all Texas citizens they are serving, leaving no one underserved and unserved. Lastly, I appreciate the board's time today and for serving and most of all protecting the citizens of the great state of Texas. Thank you for receiving public comments today.
Thank you. Next person we'll hear from is Noah Jones.
Good morning, members, and happy legislative session, everybody. I am Noah Jones, the Public Policy Analyst for the Texas Counseling Association. Today, we're here to discuss our organization's thoughts on the proposed amendment to Texas Administrative Code Title 22, Section 681-140, Requirements for Continuing Education. According to licensed professional counselor ethical codes, continuing education requirements are an important part of a counselor's duty to acquire and maintain a reasonable level of awareness of current scientific and professional information in their fields of activity. Continuing education ensures counselors maintain competency in their own fields while allowing them to acquire new skills, knowledge, and procedures when working with certain populations. The proposed amendment is still in line with those ethical codes and maintains a counselor's duty to pursue continuing education, which furthers their skills in certain areas. Counselors will maintain their ethical obligations while also maintaining their autonomy to choose whichever continuing education courses that may be of best use to them in their practice. Rules like the amendment proposed by the board seek to support counselor growth. The counseling community serves a wide array of clients from different places, spaces, and backgrounds. The amendment to the CE rule will allow for an array and breadth of courses that LPCs need in order to pursue additional education in any area which they currently practice or those areas in which they choose to become proficient in the future. We'd like to thank the board for their vigilance on this issue and for pursuing policies which benefit all Texas counselors and their clients, no matter where they come from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
Rachel Longoria.
Hey, y'all. All right. I'm gonna use my phone. Put my notes on here. Okay. My name is Rachel Longoria. I'm a current LPC. I'm a doctoral candidate, and I'm the president of Capital of Texas Counseling Association, chapter here in Austin. I am speaking for myself, though. I do want to make that clear. I am here today opposed to removing cultural diversity and competency in continuing education credits. I don't think I need to list any of the research benefits. I think that most of us here are counselors and we all know what the statistics shows as well as what peer-reviewed research shows in terms of being supportive and the benefits of specific education. I do hear y'all say that the removal of this language will make things clearer, but we can't remove language to make us more inclusive. And that's not what our profession is about. For decades, populations have been using language to increase safety, and that's what counseling is about. I do, however, want to apologize to thousands of therapists before me that have worked really hard to advocate for this multiculturalism, for importance of education, for the importance of representing marginalized communities. I also want to express my gratitude to those just like me that are continuing to do this work, just like those that have all been in favor of keeping this in our codes. We're all exhausted and we're continuing to fight because we love this profession. I do want to address those that are on the fence of this rule and think that this might not impact the future or bring more inclusivity because of language and deleting language. But I think that it backtracks a lot of education and advocacy and policies and inclusion. And a lot of y'all before me today have influenced that and advocated for that before. Not only does this impact our profession, but it impacts our clients and the direct care that they receive. The competency that we learn and continue to educate ourselves on is important. And regardless of anybody's race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, or any identities that people hold, it is important to know about those communities. The harsh rhetoric around language within culture and diversity and competency has no place in our profession. And that's why we have to continue to support this rule that is currently in place. In this past week, I have heard more colleagues, master level interns, LPCs, LMFTs, supervisors, and even doctoral candidates express shame for our profession. And a lot of them are allowing their licenses to lapse and leave the profession as a whole. There is a movement that people are not allowing, or that people are continuing to leave the profession and not renewing their licensure because of rules like this. Now, because folks think that the board does not support them, I'm here to continue to plead that we keep this rule and show that y'all do support us and that y'all do support counselors everywhere. I ask y'all to consider this and thank you for listening to me. But yeah, thanks y'all.
We get rid of this. Yeah. McGregor, can you turn that music off?
Thank you for your comments. That's all that we had for in person. So everyone online, if you can please make sure and use the raise hand function on the Zoom so that we can get you on the list to be heard. So the first person I have is Britt Hudson.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Dr. Brittany Hudson. I am a licensed professional counselor in Texas. I'm here to comment on my opposition to the proposed amendments to 681.140 requirements for continuing education. I would first like to remind the board that according to the American Counseling Association Code of Ethics, the core professional values of the counseling profession include, quote, honoring diversity and embracing a multicultural approach in support of the worth, dignity, potential, and uniqueness of people within their social and cultural context, as well as, quote, promoting social justice. The proposed changes through the expansion of this language and the so-called breadth and broadening of the rule dilute and will allow counseling professionals to, for all intents and purposes, opt out of seeking continuing education that supports these professional values and ultimately the well-being of diverse clients and marginalized clients, including disabled clients, women, and veterans. The proponents of the proposed changes have suggested that the amendment better aligns with growing efforts to, quote, eradicate DEI and DEI ideology from our society. This demonstrates their fundamental misunderstanding, if not willful ignorance about and disregard for what diversity, equity, and inclusion are, and their importance to our profession as a whole. Their petition, which has very few signatures, cites such efforts made by companies and corporations like Walmart. I would like to end with the question, is Walmart really going to be our standard of professionalism, integrity, and dignity for clients?
Thank you. Thank you. Next person we have is Whitney.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good morning. My name is Whitney Tosin, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the great state of Texas. I've been practicing for over 10 years, and to be honest, this is my first time sitting through a full board meeting. I must say that I'm very pleased with the amount of discussion that you all place surrounding ethics and doing no harm to our residents. The value placed on safety and protection of our residents and our local communities are important. As a minority woman in Texas, I want to express my strong opposition to the proposed amendment 681-140, which seeks to remove the requirement for licensed professional counselors to complete 3 hours of cultural diversity or cultural competency education. I also wrote you all, so I'm gonna kind of skip to the bottom. This does go against our ACA code of ethics, where counselors are bound to honor diversity, embrace multicultural approaches to support the dignity and worth and uniqueness of all individuals. And so I say, as I watched and witnessed the discussion around Ms. Connor's license today, and the amount of CEUs you all are, can you all hear me still, or saying you can't hear me? Surrounding the amount of CEUs you all are requiring her to take so she can go back into practicing, it tells me that ethics are really important. And I must say that we have to be proactive and not reactive when it comes to this topic. And so we do need the board to regulate us. And I don't think as professionals, sometimes we need guidelines and people to help not trust us to govern ourselves around this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone, if you did provide your written public comment, you don't need to come back on here and read that script or anything. The board members have it. They've read them all. So I just want to make sure everyone remembers that. Next person I have is Alyssa.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it's good to be here with you today, and I just want to be very honest and real and call a spade a spade. This confusion is feigned ignorance and bias in action. We have all gone through higher education institutions and spent a significant amount of time in critical reflection with supervisors and institutions of higher learning, and have been taught how to critically think. If individuals cannot reasonably come to the conclusion that the language is to be more inclusive and not a demand to change any kind of personal or bigoted opinions, then I challenge whether or not they are really competent to provide services in our state, given the current days. This proposal challenges the very essence of what it means to be competent and well-rounded professionals. Understanding diverse cultures, whether or not you agree with them or you're directly affected by them or you believe they're valid, is irrelevant. It's a basic ethical requirement of our field. It's essential to recognize and respect identities from various backgrounds, whether they be LGBTQIA, BIPOC, disabled communities, people with different cognitive abilities. Even in our training programs, we're required to take a course on cultural diversity, which talks about every single one of these identities listed. During the last board meeting, it was stated that this rule change proposal was intended to remove, and I quote, unnecessary language from our cultural diversity training. And I want to make it clear that this proposal impacts far more than language, and that no identity is unnecessary. I take our commitment to community seriously, and our words are powerful, our actions are powerful, and by removing these qualifiers, it intentionally and willfully further disenfranchises communities and creates a sense of danger in our communities. If this board doesn't understand that communities are watching and listening, then we are truly out of touch with the communities in which we serve. I will also note that today, ad nauseum, it was discussed and asked repetitively of individuals asking for a reinstatement, whether or not they were going to take continued education and further education in certain areas that they needed, which tells me that the board clearly prioritizes further education, and this is a concern. If individuals feel uncomfortable attending trainings with specific identities that are listed on the board rules, they're not required to do so. It is clear that the confusion by many, again, is feigned ignorance. Removing this language is exclusionary, and it is very clear that it is part of a larger agenda. If this board allows it to happen, we are sacrificing the greater good and the health of our communities for the sake of a few who have not done their personal work. This is the beginning, and we can nip it in the bud now, if we have the courage and the conviction to do so, and to honor our ethical responsibility to do no harm. In the last board meeting, it was actually discussed very passionately about how institutions are predatory in when they advertise that they are providing education for individuals that will never end up being licensed.
Ms. Cedillo, your time is up. Thank you.
The next person we have is, I think it's Terry Pam.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tere Pamela Ortega, and I'm an LPC in Texas. I have been for over 8 years, currently in solo private practice. And this comment is concerning the repeal of the cultural competency and diversity rule for the continuing education. So I do not support the repeal or proposed language change for this rule. It's our ethical responsibility to seek training in areas where we may impose our own values or personal beliefs. So please consider this quote that I took directly from the ACA Code of Ethics. Counselors are aware of and avoid imposing their own values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. Counselors respect the diversity of clients and seek training in areas in which they are at risk of imposing their values onto clients, especially when the counselor's values are inconsistent with the client's goals or are discriminatory in nature. I believe that repealing this cultural competency rule and erasing the word diversity would enable some counselors to remain intentionally ignorant and dismissive of certain aspects of someone's identity that they personally don't agree with or may find uncomfortable. And I recognize that not every professional validates or recognizes the existence of maybe different gender identities or sexual orientations, but they're not being asked to specialize in these specific areas or to only take trainings on these topics, but to also include removing language about age, disability, socioeconomic status would be harmful because we know that one-size treatment approach does not fit all. And the clients that walk through our doors are not all able-bodied, middle-aged, middle-class adults. This rule is necessary because it has already been proven that some counselors find it offensive to be required to take training in many of these areas. And I don't believe that they will do it unless we keep this rule and include specific examples. I believe it'd be a huge step backwards for the counseling profession in Texas to move forward with the repeal. And Texas would be giving the loud message that they don't care to ensure mental health professionals in their state are routinely trained and prepared to work with different populations. I propose keeping the current rule and adding in the proposed language to include subcultures that could also fall within this rule, like military populations, college students, immigrant populations, etc. I don't believe the current rule is misunderstood at all. What is being called broadening of the rule is actually intentional vagueness, simply to appease those who find the word diversity offensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next person, Leanne Solomson.
Good morning. Again, I'm Dr. Leanne Solomson. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor and professor at University of Houston, Victoria, as well as own a private practice. I am speaking in opposition to the change in language in the rules. I agree with so many of my colleagues who have already spoken. A couple of things that I would like to add is we already know that there are other issues in the rules that seem to be subject to interpretation and that there's constant dialogue about what does this really mean. To me, the current rules make it very clear. I respectfully disagree with the comment that they seem to be confusing. I don't think there's any confusion in there. I am disheartened by hearing the use of the words woke and trigger words in response to our profession. The basic tenets of our professional identity are unconditional positive regard. In removing these words from the rules, I think that it provides evidence of the imposition of personal values in the area of religious and political values and allowing them to infiltrate our rules. I highly oppose that. Yesterday, I reviewed these rule changes in supervision with my LPC associates, and several of my associates made the comment that if these words are offensive in our rules to some, it appears those are the people who most need to have these trainings and to understand what diversity means. I encourage you to leave the rules as written. If you're going to do anything, maybe extend the language of what diversity includes. Thank you for allowing me to comment this morning.
Thank you. Next person we have is Diane Smedley.
Yes, good morning, board. is Dr. Diane Smedley. I'm an LPCS, LMFTS, and a counselor educator. Today, I do speak on behalf of TASIS as their liaison to the board. TASIS acknowledges the proposed change as a clarification of language of continuing education requirements while attempting to preserve the original intent of the rule. The proposed rule does promote professional development in an evolving society and upholds licensees' autonomy in selecting continuing education that aligns with their clients' needs. It's always important to remember that continuing education requirements are important as they support counselor growth beyond the clinician's academic and supervised experience. I do also want to add that, it does not go without notice the board's willingness to intentionally and methodically build rules that protect all Texas citizens. Much like the work of counselors, I acknowledge that this is a deeply nuanced and crucial task, and it is my hope that we continue to support each other, board and clinicians, in completing these tasks to protect all Texas citizens. In closing, that's all I have. I appreciate your time to make these comments and your continued dedication to protecting all Texas citizens.
Thank you. Next person is Dr. Anna Salazar.
Good morning. Volume check.
Good.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, board members. My name is Dr. Ana Salazar. My pronouns are she and hers. I am a licensed professional counselor and supervisor in private practice. I am also a counselor educator and president of the Gulf Coast Counseling Association chapter of TCA. Although today I'm here speaking for myself. I am here today in opposition of the proposed changes to the rule regarding continuing education units 681.140. By removing the language of cultural competency and diversity and deleting the specific identifying language in the rule, providers in Texas will lack necessary language needed to understand how to seek out and how to continuously learn how to support historically and intentionally marginalized populations, which are increasing throughout Texas. Removing this language from our requirements to maintain our professional credentials will exclude these communities from effective care. However, specificity of language, rather than removal, would improve our ability to clinically treat groups who are already the most exposed to prejudice, discrimination, and harm. I strongly object to any proposed amendment which runs the risk of having negative impacts on the public which we serve. All mental health providers should be held to the standard of striving towards cultural humility, competency, and awareness of how to work effectively with diverse clients regardless of their own personal beliefs. My colleagues have already discussed the ACA Code of Ethics, so I'm going to skip that part. There is no evidence-based research or data to support these proposed changes. There is, however, a significant breadth of research supporting the clinical efficacy of entering a therapeutic relationship space with cultural humility and to broach our differences and identities directly with specific language. This includes data supporting our needs as clinicians to bracket our own personal biases while providing care. Data also supports that even among opposite quadrants of identities, as outlined in the MSJCC, such as privileged clinicians to marginalized identity clients, the clinician's openness to be comfortable with racial discomfort, to broach their identity, and to speak specifically to differences is a greater indicator of clinical success than rapport or identity alone. Thusly, even white privileged clinicians should not be afraid of their client's identity or status and can approach their clinical scope of practice within ACA's professional ethical behaviors and values by learning through direct and specific language. I strongly oppose these proposed changes based on the ethical codes and empirically based peer-reviewed clinical research. While one cannot be blamed for the knowledge they acquired during their training programs decades ago, the very point of continuing education is to ensure that all clinicians stay up to date and effective in their care, not to pick and choose what to study or not, which then allows one to choose to stay stagnant in their understanding and approach to care with outdated ideals and antiquated models because they haven't done their homework in reading current research, which clearly understands the impact of and supports the very language that's proposed to be removed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person we have is Megan Torres.
Hello, my name is Megan Torres. I'm an LPC supervisor in Houston. Please do not remove the cultural diversity or competency requirements for continuing education or erase the language of cultural diversity from the rules. Removing this requirement will negatively affect skilled treatment related to age, disability, ethnicity, gender, language, national origin, race, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. As communities become increasingly diverse, counselors must be prepared to work with clients from a wide range of backgrounds, including immigrants, individuals with diverse gender identities, and communities with complex historical experiences of marginalization or trauma. Without ongoing education, counselors risk misinterpreting client experiences, applying inappropriate interventions, or inadvertently perpetuating harmful stereotypes that can re-traumatize vulnerable populations. Cultural competence requires ongoing learning, self-reflection, and skill development. The 3-hour requirement is a very minimal requirement. Please do not remove this requirement or the language of cultural diversity from the rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Meredith.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Meredith Sims. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Argyle, Texas. I currently serve as the Director of Outpatient Services at Sante Center for Healing and Addiction Treatment Center. I also volunteer with the Denton County Mental Health Treatment Court and with Solutions of North Texas. However, I speak today as an individual and not representative of any of these organizations. I'm here today to speak about my strong opposition to the proposed changes to 681.140. Years ago, as a master's level student, we were taught to rigorously examine our biases and commit to continuous learning. In my years of professional counseling, this has remained the same. We must learn, we must challenge ourselves. The removal of learning requirements specific to diversity and identity would be detrimental to the profession and harmful to the clients we are committed to serving. While I understand that the intent for the change is to provide clarity or to remove, and I'll use the phrase stated earlier, trigger words, it's my concern that the change will water down the expectations of this rule in a way that creates less accountability for licensed professionals to seek out diversity training, resulting in less comprehensive care for our clients. The current wording is clear, and I'll echo something Alyssa stated earlier. Any confusion is feigned ignorance. Concerns presented by proponents of this change give me deep concern and leave me wondering, why would any counselor propose an opportunity to learn more about the individuals that we do serve? Because we all see clients that fall within the language listed in the current wording. I'm concerned that the proposed changes will allow counselors to forego ongoing self-examination and learning. And while I'm confident that it is not the board's intent to perpetuate harmful biases, eliminating these details in the wording will undoubtedly assist in the perpetuation of harmful biases, whether intentional or not. Neglect of diversity education would not only erode the trust of clients, but could also create an environment in which clients feel unsafe, misunderstood, and unsupported, reducing their pursuit of counseling in the first place. I'm also concerned that changing the language will result in our profession being viewed as what we see performed by companies across the world, performative allyship. We cannot afford to regress in our profession. For the well-being of those we serve, we must be proactive in ensuring that every counselor remains equipped to provide equitable care to all individuals, regardless of their background. Challenging our biases is not only important, it's essential. I'm passionate about advocating for the needs of our clients and ensuring that we as professionals remain committed to the highest standards of care. This includes continually improving our cultural competency, expanding our understanding of the diverse populations we serve, and committing to learning throughout our careers. Keeping the wording as it is allows for continued cultural humility. I urge the board to prioritize the ongoing education of all counselors, especially as the wording currently states, to ensure we remain effective, equitable, and ethical in our work. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the individuals who entrust us with their care and on behalf of a profession I believe in deeply, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next person is Awa.
Hi, yes. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. Awa Jangha and an LPC supervisor and counselor educator with a private practice, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I was really pleased when the requirements for continuing education included a focus on cultural diversity and competency when they were introduced a few years ago into the rules. I think language is really important, and the consideration of culture and context is extremely important in the training of graduate students who seek to become mental health counselors and in the ethical practice of clinical mental health counseling. Our intersecting identities make up who we are, and training about the cultural experiences of others allows for competent care of the whole self of the client. In addition, understanding and awareness of our own cultural identity and biases as clinicians guides us in doing no harm. I do support keeping the language of cultural diversity as part of the requirements for continuing education and oppose the proposal to amend this rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person we have is Cindy Turner. Unmute yourself, Cindy. There you go. We cannot hear you if you're speaking. We still cannot hear you. All right, we'll come back to you. Margaret.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking public comments. My name is Margaret Kim, she, her. I'm an LPC graduate student at St. Edward's University, just starting my counselor internship this semester. I am also a second generation Korean American living in Austin, and I'm speaking for myself. I want to speak to the importance of maintaining continuing education requirements around cultural diversity and competence, and my opposition to changing the language around these requirements in 681.140. Something that has been so core to my experience in getting a master's in counseling and sitting with my classmates and clients and colleagues is realizing just how much my personal lived experience is solely mine. Everyone has their unique personal lived experience, and part of this education and the education around diversity is learning how to recognize and verbalize the many assumptions that we are making all the time. These assumptions get in the way of us understanding and connecting with each other, and the only way to see these assumptions, which are so in front of our faces that they can become invisible, is to learn about what other people are going through and how they experience things and hear their unique perspectives. Because each of us has a unique perspective, and sharing these unique perspectives makes us stronger, and everyone deserves to be heard. And our fear of language is suffocating these extremely important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Cindy, let's try you again. You can unmute yourself. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I do not have something professionally prepared like everyone, but I am a licensed professional counselor in Denton, Texas. I am both visually impaired and autistic, and I want to comment in opposition to the rule being proposed. I work with Balanced Life Solutions, and while I'm not speaking on their behalf, I know that they would agree. I have encountered a lot of prejudice and discrimination, not only in society, but in this field. And whether it's relevant or not, to me, it is relevant that as a person of Christian faith myself, I believe that serving marginalized populations is exactly what we are meant to do as professionals. I saw this petition for this rule change posted in a Christian therapists group, and to me that reflected the political leanings of the religious sphere that I have been witnessing. And some of what I've been through, for example, a pastoral counseling administrator at a pastoral counseling place told me that, well, your eyes move every which direction and you better not pick your nose on camera, and I have to protect my clients as a mother hen to our clients. And so essentially she was saying your blindness is ugly and you know, I have to protect my clients from it because apparently it's contagious, even though it's not. And this is going to be virtual at that. The Pearson VUE discriminated against me when I tried to take the national counselor examination, as they told me that even though I had requested someone to read and write down my answers, for some reason, they thought that someone who reads you your answers shouldn't be able to write them down. So that put me on an unnecessary trip to Dallas because I couldn't take the test. Like, I can't see to write down the answers. I needed the reader to write them down, and every blind person will tell you that, you know, a reader both writes down and reads your answers or your questions, sorry. So that, yeah. And then, you know, I emailed the board about needing accommodations for or modifications to my hours because I had a hard time finding work, as aforementioned. Another example would be somebody canceled my interview when they found out that I was blind. So I emailed the board asking for, you know, could my hours at this other place count? And
Ms. Turner, I'm going to have to kindly ask you to wrap it up. You're over your 3 minutes.
okay, well, I'll just say that the board did not respond to me in 4 years, even though I called, emailed multiple times. And so to me, you know, as someone who can't find even, you know, comprehensive assessments for blind people, because there's few people who do it, we need reparations in this field, and we need people to specialize in multiple kinds of diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Thank you. Next person we have is Paige Helms.
Hi there, can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay. Hi there. My name is Paige Helms. I'm an LPC supervisor working in private practice in the Houston area. I primarily work with neurodivergent populations with complex developmental trauma. I do want to strongly oppose amending this language. I think that the two things I'd like to kind of point to in support of that is the necessity of diversity training in the counseling field and profession was absolutely critical to my development as a counselor and a therapist. I am cisgender, I am white, and I come from a more middle to upper class socioeconomic area, as do lots and lots and lots of counselors in this field. We are predominantly female profession, and the diversity is definitely not as great as maybe we would hope it to be one day. And so for me, diversity training and the requirements to learn about cultures and, kind of all facets of life beyond what I learned and knew growing up is why I feel like a competent counselor. I've worked in the Harris County Jail. I've worked in residential care with children and adolescents and CPS and other sorts of programs where, without cultural competence, I would not have been ethical in terms of approaching or assisting the clients that I served. And so as a white therapist and I think that we need to leave this in. The other thing I'd like to point to is just kind of the give an inch, take a mile that the people who are proposing these types of amendments are going to be kind of the way that they're going to be using it. And I'd like to point to, there's a Facebook group called Critical Thinking Therapists and Mental Health Professionals. And a licensed therapist posted, in the culture discussion, it's never brought up that cultures are different, and because they are different, some are better than others. While there can be disagreement and argument of the pros and cons of aspects of culture, we should be able to acknowledge that we do not think all cultures are equally good or lead to equally good outcomes. It isn't necessarily our job as therapists to change culture or convince people to adopt one versus another, but it seems absurd to speak as though all cultures are great and we just need to understand them to help people. I think an enormous problem in general is the increasing lack of any coherent and cohesive unifying culture in the US, and having to pretend that all cultures are equally good keeps us from attempting to even address it. In the same post, or in the same Facebook group, somebody posted a billboard of trans affirming care and said, who is profiting off of encouraging false beliefs in the mutilation of healthy bodies? Tell me again how this is about inclusivity and human rights. All of that is to say is that we already have professionals that are actively engaged in language that is harmful, and I hope that my clients would never ever see a licensed professional speak that way. And I think that removing this rule will just give people free rein to continue to do so in more and more harmful ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person we have is Edith Gonzalez.
Hello? Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Edith Gonzalez, and I am a professor at Hazelton Bedford. I'm also the president of Texas Counselors for Social Justice, though I am here as an individual. I will not repeat what others have said about the ACA Code of Ethics for the sake of time, but I just wanted to add that one, I appreciate the clarification at the beginning, but within that, I will say that as it reads, it does not clarify the essence of what you just described in the beginning. It actually leaves it open to stay away from it. And by eliminating 681 140D, it further emphasizes more room for staying away from it. So I oppose the language.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next one we have is Mallory.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I want to thank you first for accepting public comment today. My name is Mallory Keeks. I'm an LPC and ATR, which is registered art therapist, practicing in Austin, Texas, in solo private practice. I want to thank my colleagues for all of their thoughtful comments that they have already said, and I echo a lot of the sentiments that have been said so far. So I want to try to speak to a couple of different points. One being the goal of this rule change being for clarification. And I just don't believe clarification occurs with erosion. I think rather it occurs with expansion. So I agree with the potential for this rule to include additional language rather than language be taken away. So if there are other populations that it would be helpful to add additional descriptions of in this rule to add clarification for those who appear to be confused about what this would include, I think that would be appropriate. An example is that my specialization has been in eating disorders, and one of my specialties is working with people in larger bodies who face a lot of discrimination and challenges unique to that population. And that is not listed in this rule, and yet I know that will work for this requirement, and it is something I have used successfully to continue my education under this requirement. So that is one thing I want to speak to. The other thing I want to speak to is my concern about the ongoing effect of eroding this language. You have spoken to having multiple meetings with people who do not believe that this language is clear, which first of all, I want to thank you for the work that you do and having to have those conversations. I'm sure it's difficult to continually have to go through and reevaluate these things. But I believe based on trends that we're seeing across the board socioculturally right now, this is just the beginning of attempting to erode language that is special to our field, that we hold as values, that is important to the ethical care of people in the state of Texas. Texas is an incredibly large state with an incredibly diverse population of people. I originally come from New Jersey, which is very small, but still diverse. And coming here and learning more about the different populations here, it is important to continue to keep this requirement. And if the language is not clear, I believe it needs to be expanded, not eroded. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next person is Karina.
Hello.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Karina. I'm an LPCA in Houston, Texas, and I'm speaking for myself today. I'll keep it short because I think other people have said it more eloquently than I can. I oppose the current proposed language change. I think it will increase harm to the public, and we are constantly working with vulnerable populations, and it doesn't seem helpful or safe to make language less accurate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, if I could just mention to those in the public, I see a couple of late additions to the hands. We're getting close to the end. To avoid having just one pop up every now and then, if anyone wants to say anything, please raise your hand now so we know how many are coming up.
Next person we have is Corey Clark.
Hello, my name is Corey Clark, and I'm an LPC supervisor in Texas. I'm speaking on my personal behalf today and want to thank the board members, staff, and members of the public in attendance today. I want to offer public comment regarding the proposed rule change regarding cultural competency requirements for continuing education. I am not in support of the proposed change and strongly believe that the board requirements should continue to require specific cultural competency requirements for licensure and renewal. I've worked primarily in the community mental health system that includes work with individuals undergoing inpatient hospitalization. And I've seen that our behavioral systems in Texas do not yet fully represent the diversity of individuals present in the communities we serve. And I've also unfortunately seen firsthand that counselors who lack appropriate cultural awareness can not only struggle with providing optimal care, but risk alienating vulnerable patients from the very therapeutic services they most need. A lot of individuals in crisis typically require multiple encounters with treatment providers, and that requires the development of a long-term rapport. And any adverse experiences can destroy those pathways of the incremental progress that many folks experience. I fear that elimination of the CEU requirements will require practitioners to rely on subjective self-assessment of their cultural competencies. And further, that my concern for the public is that with counselors who feel most motivated to discontinue or modify their ongoing cultural competency development, if the board proceeds with the proposed change, I do still think the majority of providers will continue to engage in the ongoing cultural competency training as part of our ethical obligations. But if the requirement is waived or modified, individuals seeking counseling services may not be able to identify therapists in the community who have an ideological or otherwise opposition to these concepts of cultural awareness and sensitivity. And in our current political climate, I fear that this will embolden counselors with potential biases and prejudices to feel as though they can expose their clients to those kind of damaging beliefs. Also, I want to note that this is a matter as a signifier to our community as professional counselors, whether the board will stand up to future outside political pressures that might prove even more directly harmful to our clients. I personally do not see any potential benefit to the public by eliminating or otherwise weakening the current cultural competency requirements, and I feel there's significant risks and harms that may result from adopting the proposed change. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Dr. Garcia.
Are we no longer accepting additional hand raises? We drawing the line?
Chair's prerogative. If you'd like to draw the line at whose hand is
we
raised.
gave everybody a notice on it.
Okay.
Everybody who still has their hand raised, and then we'll
So-
take those, and then we'll move on.
Ooh, Ashley, you got in there just at the end. So the last commenter will be Ashley Shore. Anyone raising their hand after this will not be recognized.
Dr. Garcia, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your time. I'm Dr. Meg Garcia. I'm an LPC in Dallas and own a private practice. I oppose the change as well. I specialize in working with immigrant and multiracial clients. Counseling is for everyone. Our help is for everyone. As previously said, if anyone finds offense to the current wording, they are the ones who seem to need the continuing education and diversity the most. With the current political climate, marginalized groups will need the mental health support even more so. And as therapists, we must remain trained and educated in how we can best support them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have is Kathleen Mills.
I'm Kathleen Mills, licensed professional counselor supervisor and co-creator of the Association for Mental Health Professionals. Our profession is deeply divided right now, thanks to almost entirely our academic output of the last 20 years. And there's plenty of evidence to support that. I am a highly competent therapist, and I resent anyone telling me otherwise or redefining the term based on an agenda. I am not against diversity as a concept. I just happen to believe it should be based on merit, not handouts. I don't hate anyone, and I'm tired of being publicly libeled for having different views about my professional career of more than 34 years. I want to thank Robert Roming and his staff for executing the QR in such a professional and organized manner. The rewording language Robert proposed to the MFT board last week is very acceptable to me and our organization. I do think you should consider giving the requirement a name that is more descriptive of its intent. Now let's talk about professional decorum. I understand people have the right to say whatever they want to say, but there's a line you don't cross, and professionalism demands an additional layer of control. I also understand that it's not BHEC nor this board's duty to regulate free speech. I get that, but there has to be a line we don't cross and a penalty to pay for doing so. For example, last Sunday, a counselor in a very large North Texas Facebook group viewed our petition to remove cultural diversity requirement, shared it, and the group went nuts. What ensued was several hours of the most childish, mean girl posts you can imagine. I can handle the personal attacks, insults, innuendos, and unhinged comments. I'm a big girl, and I've been through worse with what they can dish out. But here's the thing. My associates and employees get wind of this stuff. Now you've got my attention. Fortunately, my associates recognize emotionally unregulated when they see it, and I'm able to turn this into a very object lesson in how to not act as a professional, but it never fails to make them question their career choice. We have the privilege of talking with counselors across the country daily, and I can tell you without reservation, this is far, far from an isolated incident. The larger facet of this unprofessional behavior is public perception. The public doesn't trust us, and counselors have figured this out. I'm asking you to accept BHEC's proposed rewording of cultural diversity rule. Give it a more accurate name, and let's seriously think how we can hold our licensees to a much higher level of professionalism on social media and act on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person we have is Philip Crum.
Good afternoon. I'm Philip Crum, Texas citizen, and I'm co-creator of AMP, and the tide is turning. On a national level, on Tuesday, President Trump signed an executive order putting a halt to federal funding for any hospital or institution administering puberty blockers, replacement hormone therapy, or still butchering our children in the name of affirming care. That nightmare is coming to an end. The DEI initiative is also being swept from the military and other national institutions as we speak in favor of a merit-based system, and the same is happening at our state level too. For example, Texas passed Senate Bill 14 2 years ago, defining surgical mutilation of minors under the guise of affirming care as child abuse and ordered all hospitals to cease those activities. They did not. Dr. Etan Hine blew the whistle on one of the state's largest systems because they refused to comply with state law, and he's been illegally persecuted for the last 2 years through the court system for his efforts. That nightmare ended last Friday when the Trump DOJ filed papers for dismissal and a judge dismissed them all with prejudice. The Texas legislature, and the governor's office also passed Senate Bill 16, which required the state-run university system to eliminate its DEI offices and initiatives from the hiring process. And there is currently a bill before the legislature to expand that edict to the university curriculums. There was an earlier caller, and she's correct, this is only the beginning of a national effort to remove DEI from our systems, including this profession. The will of a vast majority of the voters, both in Texas and across the country, is very clear. Our members are sick and tired of the emotion-driven woke ideology running everything. We're fed up being called racists, bigots, and words ending in phobic. We're tired of being told we don't understand what compassion is, or that we don't care about clients, or we want people to die, simply because we don't think surgery for children should be a treatment option for gender issues. There's a common thread that runs through all of the comments that have been made prior to mine, and that is that if we don't agree with what you think, there must be something mentally wrong with, or our critical thinking skills are lacking, or we can't connect dots, or I don't know how to read. None of that is true. Our mission for the last 2 years has been to have the 3-hour diversity requirement removed completely, not because we're against diversity, as Kathleen mentioned, but because of the way it's been defined, weaponized, and to force outcomes. Its premise is that counselors are inherently incompetent, and somehow the workforce shortage will be solved if every white counselor learns to deal with Black, brown, and gay people. And we find that highly insulting. A counselor is free to work where they want to work and deal with the populations of their choice. I urge the board to support and pass the new language. While we'd much prefer a total elimination of the rule than the proposed changes to the wording, those changes effectively negate the original DEI objective. And as an aside, we have not misunderstood the original objective. As written, the new wording would now simply require my counselor friends to take 3 hours of classes they were already going to take for their targeted client markets. Earlier, Ms. Turner said we need people to specialize in different fields, and I absolutely agree with that. Specialize in those marginalized groups that you're concerned with. I'm concerned with them too, but specialize if you want to treat a certain group. Don't force everybody to take everything and become an expert in everything. You can't do it. Another caller said subjective self-assessment is not a good thing. We have to have the state determine our competency now. That's a dangerous slope on which to pitch your tent. The glaringly obvious DEI requirement for cultural diversity needs to be eliminated or reworded, and it needs to happen today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have is Harmony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Harmony Stewart. I'm an LPC associate, and I'm speaking on my own behalf today. I just want to say I also oppose the proposed language change. And as many people have already said, I also believe that doing away with the cultural competence CE requirement or eroding the language of that rule could be harmful to the public, harmful to clients. I agree with what the last two callers said, in that I also feel that we should not be, as counselors, our professional standards should be above that of what is on social media. The polarizing language, and we should not be weaponizing our regulatory rules as politically. And I heard one of them say diversity, they believe in diversity, but it should be based on merit. And I just have to say, that does not, when are our clients, when do they need to, when is treatment for clients based on merit? Again, this should not be political, cultural wars. Our standard, our professional standard and our ethics require us to prioritize the client's needs. And I don't feel that cultural competence of marginalized groups who are most vulnerable and who have historically and continue to experience disparity and lack of options and representation in seeking mental health help. I don't think that should be considered a specialization. So again, I oppose the proposed change as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next person is Patricia.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Patricia Infante, and I'm a current counseling student, and I'm speaking for myself only. I want to express my support to this amendment. As a Texas resident with multicultural experience, having lived in multiple countries, I wholeheartedly support counselors being able to successfully serve all populations that require care, and I believe the language that is being proposed in the amendment demonstrates such intent. I believe opposition to the current amendment validates the reason why the language must be modified, and this is that it is interpreted as administering education that follows a particular viewpoint of addressing diversity needs in the profession. In this sense, the terms of diversity and multicultural competency are seen to allude to the teaching and validation of one specific narrative regarding what it means to administer care for diverse individuals, which explains why the language modification is seen as the elimination of a certain point of view in the discussion or the complete elimination of the duty of counselors to successfully care for all patients. If anything, this reaction validates that as it stands today, the words of diversity and multicultural competency are not solely being interpreted as ensuring competency when providing services to a distinct population, but approaching, adhering, teaching, and embracing the dominance of a particular theory or approach to diversity and inclusion in the field. One that I have the courage to see appears to only look like intersectionality, privilege, and oppression narratives. In this sense, I do believe that embracing this amendment does enable a clearer view of what our duty as counselors looks like, and that it does not mean rigid adherence to these narratives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person is Emily, and then Ashley, you'll be right after. Go ahead, Emily. Oh, it looks like you're on mute.
Emily, can you unmute yourself? Aschenbrenner?
All right, Emily, we'll come right back to you. Ashley, go ahead. And you're also on mute.
Ashley Shore?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Ashley Shore. My background is in art education in the private sector. I am currently an LPC grad student, and I've been working in Uvalde, Texas since October of 2022 with community art therapy and the nonprofit, the Uvalde Love Project. I speak today on behalf of myself. Thank you to the board for listening to comments today. I'm here to advocate in opposition to a language change or the potential removal of the continued requirement of cultural competency CEUs for licensed mental health professionals. I've listened to so many counselors today whom I look up to and aspire, and I'm excited to join a profession with such a deep regard to ethics. They have echoed the importance of the code of ethics that we follow and the value in being trained in culturally responsive care. I also just want to acknowledge that discussions about transgender healthcare are complex and deeply personal for many. However, our focus today is on ensuring that mental health professionals are equipped with the necessary cultural competencies to serve diverse communities effectively. Cultural CEUs are not about promoting specific medical procedures. They are about ensuring ethical, informed, and effective mental health care for all Texans. Let's stay on track with the purpose of this discussion, ensuring that licensed professionals are prepared to meet the needs of the populations they serve. Through my work with the Uvalde Love Project, I've seen firsthand how culturally responsive mental health initiatives can make tangible impact in communities that have experienced trauma. Engaging with survivors and educators in Uvalde reinforced the importance of clinicians being prepared to work with diverse populations in meaningful and informed ways. Cultural competency training is not theoretical. It is a practical, essential tool for real-world healing. Continuing to require cultural competence is an investment in the integrity of our field and the well-being of our communities. It also ensures that we are being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars by maintaining policies that work rather than spending resources to fix something that isn't broken. I urge the board to uphold this essential requirement so that we can continue providing the highest standard of care to all Texans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Emily Ashbrenner, if you still wanted to provide public comment, please raise your hand. Or should I just ask? Okay. Okay. Okay, it concludes our public comment.
Thank you, everyone. Board, I need to take a quick break. And if does others need to as well? Okay, then let's break for 5 minutes and then we will be right back. And we are out of, go ahead. Thank you. The time is now 12:51 p.m. We are now back in session. Before we begin our discussion, Robert, one more time, just briefly, kind of explain where the original rule came from, we've had these unintended consequences on why it's become an issue, and why the draft language proposed by staff remedies that issue that this has become. If you will, please.
Absolutely. So the original design or impetus from this rule, sorry? Yes, I'll lean forward. The original design, well before these boards adopted the rule, came from the state health plan and its recognition that as the state grows larger and larger and becomes more and more diverse, that it is important for licensed professionals to be trained, to have opportunities to develop their competency as a group to provide services to that diverse population. Over time, there has been an assumption, by both positive and negative, and I want to be clear that we as staff and the board and the council are not endorsing these views of what the rule meant, but simply stating this is what some people describe it as. And it was a misunderstanding that it was requiring, on the negative side, that it was requiring education in a certain world viewpoint using terms like woke. And again, I'm not agreeing with that term. And that it was a certain viewpoint about diversity. On the positive, it was also this assumption that that the requirement was to be trained to provide services specifically to, as we've heard, marginalized and disadvantaged groups. And while that may be an interesting public policy conversation for another day. Staff's goal is to clarify the rule language to be what it always was, which was a recognition that there are many different population characteristics, and the state health plan's goal was to have a diverse cadre of licensees who could approach services for that diverse set of populations, and that it was allowing licensees to choose which groups and populations they were intending to serve while holding them to a ethical standard and a professional standard that they be competent to serve those people where they are. I cannot agree more with some of the commenters that have said it is not in the standards of practice for a licensed professional to use their platform to attempt to change where the client's beliefs and views are. It is about the licensee being competent when those folks walk in their door to be able to provide services to them where they are in an ethical manner. That continues to be the goal of the board, all the boards, and the council. And this rule is saying that whichever populations you are choosing to do that for, you need to be competent to do so.
Okay. And I apologize. Have the other mental health boards, have they brought this up yet?
Yes, all three other boards have brought this up and have voted this same language, approved this same language.
Okay. Well, just for our benefit, have what sort of concerns or what sort of issues have been brought up there that perhaps weren't brought up on the public comment?
So very similar public comments. The social work board was yesterday, and I'd say you and the social work board had the most public comments. And certainly the other board members also have wanted to express that this is not an elimination of the requirement or a watering down of the requirement or a backing away from that very core idea of being competent.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate you, staff, coming to us with a solution. Instead of just saying, board, here's a problem, y'all figure out how you're going to fix it. You came to us with a solution that addresses the core problem here. And hearing that the other mental health boards have already, approved the changes, that makes me inclined to follow suit. I mean, this was originally a standardization on the rule, as you said, in the original intent. And I would like to see us maintain that standardization with our other sister mental health boards. So that being said, we will open it up for discussion. We've all read I think we ended up 286 written public comments, and public, thank you for submitting those. And then we just heard via Zoom and a few here in person as well. At this time, I'll open it up for discussion on the proposed amendment as it's written and submitted to us by staff with their recommendation. So, who would like to begin?
Chairman Hallbauer, I'd like to begin because this actually hits.
Sean, hang on. Sorry, Ms. Winston chimed in first, so hang on just a second. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. This is just more for clarification. No CEU classes were excluded or removed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And prior to this, there was no absolute specific requirement, like per population, right?
Right.
No, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Jen, like came up earlier, public member, we have to say, okay, make this change. Do we feel as though we're putting the greater public at risk? And that's how I evaluate all these things, because you and I and Vanessa and Sean, we're not professional members. And so it's our job to kind of take a higher level look at it and say, the board makes this change, are we putting the public at risk by doing this change? In my opinion, we're not. But that's for what I would ask each of the public members to say, because we are sort of higher level. My cliche is we have 30,000 Texas LPCs, and that's where our professional members represent those, but there's 30 million run-of-the-mill everyday Texans, and it's our job to kind of step back, take a look on behalf of those 30 million. That's how I view it. And Sean and Vanessa, I would encourage y'all to do the same. Do you believe that making this change, are we a material risk of harm to the public being created by a proposed change? So, Sean, go ahead now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want the public to understand why I'm going to end up voting the way that I'm going to vote, because I do believe in diversity. My middle name is Karim. My last name is Shakermi. My dad came from Iran. My heritage traces 3,000 years back to the Persian Empire. But people in today's society don't recognize Persia. They recognize Iran as a hostile state. So I grew up with all types of prejudice in my own life. And unfortunately, the Persian or Iranian population is not large enough to even be recognized. So I rarely, if ever, even benefited from certain DEI things that were around when I was in school for scholarships and stuff like that. So I completely empathize and understand why the public feels the way they do. But when I actually read the language, the new proposed language protects the public better than the old language. And so that is why I'm ultimately going to vote my conscience and to protect the public, is because the rule as it is proposed actually specifies what must be done and specifies that certain CEUs must be taken based on a population group. Whereas in the old language, yes, I understand that there were some buzzwords, and thank you, Robert, for addressing the positive and negative of the buzzwords, but those buzzwords weren't really that clearly defined. And in the definition in the past of cultural diversity, it gave the common language where groups like me as a Persian or as an Iranian American weren't even recognized. So this new language actually does a better job of promoting diversity and protecting the public.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Vanessa, since I guess we're leading off with our public members, so do you want to give us your thoughts before we move on?
Honestly, Chair Bauer, I don't have any additional comments. I think I'm ready for the vote.
Okay. Thank you. Professional members, yeah, I apologize that we just kind of started with the public members, but let's hear your thoughts on this. Dr. Amuna, go ahead.
I will say that I greatly appreciate the explanation by council and staff. I would say that I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the potential symbolism for some of our licensees regarding what it means to remove the language, even if it's better and it's helping and it's clearer and it's not going to do any harm. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the symbolism of removing the language, what it can mean for other people. And so I need to have that on record.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Muna. Janie?
I will say I'm really kind of conflicted. I do like that the new language keeps the instruction to ensure competency, and I've shared that. In reading all of the public comment, because my first comment in my report regarding that was to have that clarification that we're not removing any CEUs. And overwhelmingly, a lot of the public comment was like, please don't remove the CEUs. And I'm like, okay, I think that, we're not removing, we were adjusting language. Many of you in your public comment, in your verbal comment shared, don't remove the language as well. And so I'm still processing it. I don't have an answer yet.
Okay. Dr. Bradley, your thoughts?
Provided by Robert. And just sitting here making some notes on this, I think exceptionalism is often easily misunderstood. And I think that we have kept this whereby we're trying to understand what's right, protect the welfare of our clients. So I'm for the proposed amendment. I think that we need to be aware of the public and the welfare of the public and look toward effective care to all clients. And that, for me, includes distinct populations. So I'm for it.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. And Ms. Campanone?
So I am also for the proposed language. I think we've spent a good amount of time today talking about the language and exactly what you all meant on it. And so I'm hoping that that's going to help a lot of the people who commented and just misunderstood what we were trying to do. So I'm ready to take a vote.
Okay. Dr. Taylor, you are last one we haven't heard from.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank our public members. I think they said it best. I don't really have anything substantive to add other than I'm in agreement and I'm ready to vote.
Okay. If someone wants to make a motion, feel free to do so.
I move we adopt the changes.
Okay. Ms. Winston has moved that we approve the proposed amendment to 681.140. And Dr. Bradley has seconded the motion. Since we have a motion and a second, I will briefly ask if there's any further discussion based on the specific motion as offered. Okay, hearing none, we will vote at this time. I would ask that all in favor of the proposed amendment on the changes offered by staff to 681.140, if you would signify by raising your right hand. And I want to make sure I get the appropriate count on this. Thank you. That was 7. Okay, 7 in favor. All those opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. And we will log you as 2 abstentions. Okay. All right, then the amendment passes. Thank you, everybody. We will go ahead and move on at this point. Item number 11, Robert, discussion and possible action on expiration of the associate license.
Yes. So this is one we're not actually asking for any board action, but I wanted to bring it to the board's attention. Honestly, mostly to be able to talk to the members of the public here listening. We had a individual, Ms. DuPont, reach out asking it potentially to do a petition to change the rules that exhibited a misunderstanding, and I talked to her about it. She was good, but it was not the first one about the ability for an associate to carry their hours forward past the 5 years. There's a misunderstanding out there that an associate license, by expiring after 5 years, if you do not get all of your hours done in those 5 years, you are out of luck. There's nothing you can do. And that is not the case at all. So 2 points I wanted to make so the board knows and the public knows is the associate license you can get again. Once your associate license expires in 5 years, you may simply reapply for another associate license and keep on keeping on. In addition, all of the hours that you earn, supervised experience, in that first 5 years carry forward. You do not lose those hours. And so if your life circumstance as an associate means that you cannot get everything done to upgrade your license in 5 years, that is totally okay. You can keep on going, and move forward with your work.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Any questions? Okay. This did say possible action. Is there anything that we should consider?
It was only if, in explaining it, y'all thought of something that needed to happen and directed us to go do something. We
Okay.
don't have anything you need to do.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Item number 12. Sean has some information that he wanted to share with the board, and so I will hand it to him for agenda item number 12. And there is a handout as part of the board materials if you want to get that out. But I'll turn it over to Sean at this time for his presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm coming before the board to make a short presentation and also to all the attendees and the public of the state. Especially after the past hour that we discussed the changes to this rule, it's very apparent that there is a schism in your specialty internally. And I'm really, really trying to advocate and just beg all of you, not just the board, but LPCs throughout the state of Texas and the public as well, to come together and find unity as counselors, because your specialty is the last line of defense for full vertical integration. Another word for that would be monopoly of the large health insurance companies, and your specialty is under attack. Now, I recognize many on the board are public members, and many of the professional members do not accept insurance reimbursement. However, Medicare rates and insurance reimbursement will affect your profitability whether or not you accept insurance or not, because they affect the market rate. Now, what I found in my work is there are several online platforms. Today, I will talk mainly about Headway, but also a little bit about Alma. Headway is an online platform that allows therapists, LPCs, and other related professional licensees to offer their services. Now, what happened at the end of 2023 is HCSC, and I understand that this is a little bit confusing. So Healthcare Services Corporation owns Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Montana, Illinois, and New Mexico. So they own 5 Blue Cross Blue Shield state franchises. And they now are the lead investor inside of Headway. So what is happening is Headway has now, I believe, 30 to 45,000 therapists. And they're not all LPCs. They can be some of the other licensees as well in the state of Texas on their platform, which basically means that Blue Cross Blue Shield owns 45,000 providers in our state and dictates the reimbursement and the market price. And that is a huge conflict of interest and something that needs to come to your attention, and probably the state legislators' attention at some point too. Because what's happening is Blue Cross Blue Shield is decreasing the reimbursement rate to counselors not on the Headway app to a point where it is hard for them to maintain profitability. Now, I understand probably none of you got into your field based on money alone. Neither did I. Neither did I. However, if you are not able to make a livable wage off of your career, you will no longer be in business. And we will see the exact opposite effect of what we really want, which is a a fair and open marketplace and a prosperous counseling industry. I have more statistics and things that I can bring to your attention, but the overarching idea here is there's a lot of external forces at play that are really threatening not just the long term, but the short term future of your industry. And I really, really hope that we can come together and that your specialty can come together and start to put a stop to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Board, questions for him? No. Sean, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Go ahead and move on to item number 13, recommendations for agenda items in our next meeting. Does anyone have anything to add? Any final comments or accolades or we've got people that are getting degrees. Congratulations to those. Ms. Winston and Ms. Hall, I believe. Is that correct? Is about to get her degree. Congratulations to you two. Board members, some of your terms may be up. If this is the last time that I see you in person, then thank you for your service. On behalf of the citizens of Texas, thank you for your service. It would be great to continue to see you. However, that's out of my hands. But no, on behalf of the board, on behalf of the people of Texas, thank you for your service. All of y'all who maybe we'll see you again. Maybe we won't. So, anything else to add? Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Campanone, and
Second.
a second from Ms. Stubblefield. Again, kind of a complex meeting today. Good work. I know all of y'all have your hearts in the right spots. Thank you for your service to the state of Texas. We'll take all in favor of adjourning, and that does it. At 1:16, we are done. Thank you.